Hello. Why did that happen? Okay. Um. Oh, how can I make you a mod, Maddie? Let me see. Add as moderator. Boom. Managing moderator. Boom. Okay, Maddie, you're a moderator now. Okay, so as I was saying, hello everybody, and welcome to another video version of one of my Substack essays where I read it out loud for accessibility purposes and interact with the chat, the amazing pissies. Today we are on YouTube Live instead of Twitch because I caught a 30-day ban from Twitch last week for teaching people how to shoplift, which I knew would come with the territory. I was not like surprised that that happened or anything, but I thought to myself like, oh, this talk when I did it at Enemy Sicko's Genius Night, it was only 15 minutes long, 12 minutes long, if that. And so this will be a really quick and dirty stream. Maybe I won't get caught. It'll be like an hour of just like riffing on the beat. But no, that was not the case. We were talking for like 2 hours about all kinds of shoplifting strats and techniques, and then we caught a 30-day ban. So that's fine. That doesn't really bother me at all. Like I said, I knew that was a very distinct possibility going in. So that's totally fine. And we have YouTube here as an alternative. And I've wanted to experiment with YouTube Live for a while now because I know there are a lot of people that follow me on, say, Instagram who are very like normie pilled, non-gamer elites who they don't know what Twitch is. And they're like afraid to even click the link to do it. And YouTube live streams seem to be more the purview of like legal commentary channels and like more like kind of normie stuff, which is, you know, like that is a lot of people who are interested in my stuff. So we'll see how it goes. It seems like I'm really happy to see so many people over here already. Like it seems like hopping over has worked pretty well. Male Valence says, how quick can we get banned on YouTube? Uh, Probably more easily. Like YouTube is more swift with like the sexual content stuff even than Twitch is. So it's so frustrating because you have to memorize all the rules of all these different platforms. Like we know from our previous Twitch ban that you can't show a Hitachi boot. Not even a fucking Hitachi boot. It's not even like a phallus. It's just a personal massager. And that can get you, I think we got a 30-day ban, Maddie and I, when we showed that last time. But YouTube is also harsh about a lot of shit. So we'll see how this goes. But you know, some of this stuff has even been monetized, some of the videos I've listed. So they haven't taken anything down other than copyright stuff. That's the thing that YouTube is kind of worse on, is copyright stuff. Damn, the delay is crazy. Yes, the delay is higher for a reason in the settings for the captions. I had to put so for YouTube settings, I had a choice between a faster, like shorter latency, but that would be lower video quality and not have captions, or I could have automatic captions live and better quality and a delay. So there is more of a delay here. And so that comes with the territory, unfortunately. But it should be a little bit more of a delay than Twitch, I think. And there's a bunch of shit that like Maddie, you would probably understand that I don't understand about like the RMS something type stream. I don't know. The settings are a little bit different, but fucking crazy. The chat is just working. I thought the chat would not just magically work. So that's really nuts. That it's like putting it on the screen. That's good. Lots of people were able to see the notification apparently on Discord and Instagram and YouTube. I don't like that you can't embed it live on the Tumblr feed the way you can live embed like an auto playing Twitch stream in the Tumblr feed. But yeah, uh, it's more seamless than I thought. And actually, OBS has this interesting, like it just popped out the chat separately automatically once I put in a YouTube stream key, which if I had another monitor, it would work really well. It would look really good. Which I'm getting closer and closer every day, Maddie, to biting the bullet and getting a new monitor. And just putting it right here. I just don't have like, then I'm gonna have to like reorient my desk setup a little bit, like put them at angles, and it's a whole thing. But and then there won't be anywhere for the baby to sit. But it would be nice to not have to use my fucking phone as my chat. Um, but yes, hello, welcome everybody. Thanks for being here on YouTube for this. Let's see who all's in the chat. I know almost everybody's here. Edge Peasant, Sasha, Hey Zelda, Maddie, of course. Hello, Male Valence, Red Seraph. Again, thanks for the follow. HC, thanks for being here. Yeah, that's everybody that's been active in the chat so far. They might have fewer moderators on YouTube, I think. Yeah. It's very like with YouTube you really don't go like digging around for random live shit to watch, you know? Like it's more just if somebody you follow and have hit the bell to be in the notification squad, da, 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 then you see that they go live. So like it seems like it's less of an apparatus. But yeah, I'm excited to be trying it. I'm excited to be trying it out on this blistery, grim, gray day. How's everybody doing? It's a little bit before lunchtime, CST, middle of the day, EST. So hopefully a good time for a lot of people. And I imagine we'll have more people trickling in a little slower than usual. One of my eyes looks really bleary, and I don't know why. And the lighting is just so horrible because it's so gray out. So, how's everybody doing with that winter depression? Because it's, I can feel it coming for me with this gray ass weather. Bad, unfortunately. Yeah, yeah, feels bad. Feels bad out here. This weekend in Chicago was just MIR, which used to stand for Mr. International Rubber, but I guess they just got rid of it standing for anything to be more gender neutral. So now it's just MIR. It's kind of like how KFC stopped being KFC. So I'm in honor of MIR. I'm wearing my blood shrimp latex shirt. It's this little crop top with a picture of blood shrimp in an all latex gimp suit with zippers over the mouth and eyes coming out of a beautiful pool of water to another person clad in latex with wet hair looking down on them. I didn't even make it out to MIR this weekend, but out of respect for my latex community, little latex shirt moment today. An alternative lifestyle, since we're talking about alternative lifestyles, quote unquote, today. And I've got a little teal flannel thrown over it because it's cold. Phoenix Rise, hello, says, I was so bummed on the last stream. I was really enjoying it. I'm excited for today's topic. Yes, so we did finish the shoplifting stream on the Discord if you're not a member of the Piscord. And it was fun. It was a great little talk, sharing strats and different regional differences in shoplifting too. Male Valen says a thing happened last week that was extremely upsetting. Can't talk about it yet. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. But the Discord and all of us will be here if it's something you at any point do feel comfy talking about. But yeah, sometimes you just don't want to even look under that, not even scab, like touch that open wound, which is very, very understandable. I've been very happy to see how people on the Discord for these streams and me and Maddie's streams have been like such like supportive and without also being like those Discord servers where people have vent channels where people are just fully crashing out all the time, and that seems to be like kind of like encouraged and facilitated, you know? Like it's like people have really talked about like really hard stuff that they're going through in real time and gotten useful support practically and just an ear without it ever feeling like weird, like inappropriate boundaries or people jumping into the void without a parachute, which I think sometimes is kind of how it feels sometimes on some online communities or whatever. So it's been really nice that like y'all just show up like in a with a consistent like kind of like good faith and compassion for each other, and like we're all in the fucking muck together in a way that's just always been really nice. So I appreciate that. Sasha says I have the opposite. I have summer depression big time. Well, congratulations on winter uh if you're in the hemisphere where that's relevant, which I think you are. Yeah. Thriving in the October chill, yeah, except for getting sick from medication side effects and discontinuing them. Mm. Mia Valen says has to do with my art. Lots of people in the Discord are interested in that stuff, so I'll probably talk in there eventually. Well, that's good. Yeah, yeah. I know. Yeah, you've talked about like chorus stuff and or singing stuff and all kinds of different creative projects and stuff. So you know, probably whatever it is, probably things that people in the server can relate to if that's ever helpful. But um, yeah, I've seen that sort of thing a lot. I don't want to tell people to not do that, but it's if it's all the time, it can get too intense in aggregate. Yeah, this is something that I've kind of talked about. Like personally, I never wanted to make like event channel like on the server. Like I like it. I maybe this is like cold hearted, or maybe there's like this is the non empathy talking or like something, but like it's like I just don't want to create like an open space where it's just encouraging people to use the server as not even therapy, but like a venting ground without there being any kind of relational back and forth to it, you know? Like people share things that they're upset about and they get into a great conversation about it on the server all the time and like in these streams all the time too. And that seems comfortable. It seems like it's not like there's no guardrails when it's just event channel, and I think I don't know that it really makes people feel better when I've seen servers and Telegram channels and things like that that have event thread. Like it seems like it's just people throwing their vulnerability out to the void, and then they end up feeling worse because nobody responds to it because it's like an overwhelming amount of that. And yeah, it's just there's I think there's the relational aspect. If I had to pin down what the difference is, um, between like what seems like not good to like foment on these kinds of platforms and like what I've seen happen on the Discord that's been like really nice and pleasantly surprising. I think it's something like that. That there's a relational back and forth where two people or more people will just choose to get into a conversation about something that's going on, and it'll happen potentially in a relatively synchronous fashion rather than a person just like really like driving themselves more and more crazy talking about something to the void. Um, and that actually reminds me of something from the book, How to Deal with Emotionally Explosive People from by Albert Bernstein. He kind of talks about how uh, I think it's that book, and I think they talk about it in Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by Lindsay Gibson too, in a similar way, where when you're holding space for somebody, like you want to listen and receive if you can do that, but once they start to get repetitive, if they start like repeating themselves verbatim or like they seem to be stuck on something, then you're at the point where you're just kind of facilitating someone's like ruminative loop, and that isn't necessarily helpful. So I think that's kind of the philosophy. I don't know. You know it when you see it. Hey, Waluigi and Bowser Jr., YouTube finally notified me that you're streaming. Yes. Yeah, I'm glad the notification worked. Um, yeah, Sasha saying, I've been on both sides of the vent channel, being the person freaking out and inconsolable, and being the person trying to help and getting overwhelmed and having to disengage. There is something about like giving to support to someone who cannot receive it or even rejects that support that is really difficult. And it's if you again if you don't have any existing like relational cachet to build on, sometimes that happens, and also sometimes that's just the state that the person's in, but it's tough. um Red Seraph said, I have seen a Discord where there's a vent channel where you can only see your message and then it is deleted. So only you can see your message and then it is deleted. But I think journaling could do the same effect. Yeah, at that point, I don't know if it's like why it's a Discord server thing, but that's my personal taste, you know. Trill, hello, welcome. Glad to see ya. And yes, the only time we've seen that work is on local group servers for moderately organized groups who meet in person. Yeah, they got rid of the vent channel in the pup group that I'm a part of because the moderators did not have the resources to like go through all that. Or actually, it was a seeking support channel, so it was kind of both vent and things like, has anybody seen any jobs? Can anybody help me find a roommate? Like a whole spectrum of person actively in crisis to person trying to crowdsource support. And that meant the moderators really had to be in there to make sure people weren't sharing links that weren't a good fit and like behaving inappropriately or whatever. And it was just too much to have to like take that all in. And like um this itself is an interesting conversation about like building networks of support outside of like the therapeutic apparatus, because I think there is part of me that wants to say this thing isn't therapy. You can't just use a person like a therapist. But also, like, we're very critical of like therapy as a separate thing divorced from regular life here. So, how in what ways we should like emotionally show up for other people and like what those limits are is a confusing thing, I think, once you're like in the radical mental health space. But there's definitely some stuff that definitely for me seems like, well, this is a shit show. Okay, let me catch up on the chat. Waluigi Bowser says, earlier they told me that I had to verify my age using my ID. Ugh, fucking YouTube. Hate that. Anime Sicko's Discord has grievances and petty grievances, which is usually pretty good. The vibe is different from those vent channels. Yeah, yeah, and that's what I like about the Piss Course channel for the most part too on our server, where it's mostly people just saying like, get a load of this bullshit. Like that's how I like it being used. It's not quite debate. It's not quite vent. It's like, here's something that's on my nerves lately, which we talked about, I think, on the last stream, that is such a great icebreaker question or catch up question. Like, who's getting on your nerves lately? Um, that's so much more fun than like, what did you do this week? Or like, what do you do for a living? Like, who's getting on your nerves lately is like such a. Ask me that question and I'll melt. And I love to hear people bitch about like somebody who's getting on their nerves. It's just so fun. Trilcon said there was an explicit support group at one point, but it didn't get enough people after a while. Lower than 4 is too few to justify, but it had up to 12. Yeah. A separation between heavier and lightweight stuff is also great. Yeah, because I think people, if somebody's complaining about like feeling like suicidal or something, it's pretty hard to then be the next person in the server to be like, oh, they ran out of bananas at the store. And it's like, complaining rules. We should complain about whatever we want and everything, including the petty things. We should sweat the petty things. Maddie said, I had a phone call, which reminds me, the one cool thing on YouTube is you can watch the stream you missed on fast speed to catch up what's happening live if you want. Oh, I've never tried that. That's cool. That's dope. On my end, this is going to be great because I'm not going to have to like download, like highlight, download, re-upload the video. All I'll have to do is like grab a thumbnail and make a stupid thumbnail and upload it, and then I'm like done, and then email it out. So that's going to be fun. But with this setup, with the pop-out chat thing that OBS is doing, I'm really going to have to get a different monitor because it would be so helpful to just be able to fucking view the chat like this all the time. Therapy as a separate device. Awkward that we're waiting for our therapist. Well, I mean, plenty of people get lots of very helpful things out of therapy. Like, I don't think we're like a. This is true for like psychiatry, right? Like, I'm an anti-psychiatry person, but that doesn't mean I want people to not access psychiatric drugs. I'm against psychiatry as a powerful institution that determines who is healthy, who is in need of further like state surveillance, who has access to the substances they want, right? All of that stuff. And I think therapy too, like, I think there is a place for there being a separate kind of designated person in your life that you can seek the counsel of, who is not involved in your personal affairs, and that there are a lot of advantages that come from that. It's just when it is put through like a capitalist apparatus that it's a problem. Um, and all of the incentives wrapped up in that get difficult. But I don't think we're not anti-therapists here or anti-therapy, but I think generally more skeptical of like there's this harsh dividing line between things that you talk about your therapist with and things that, and you can't trauma dump on your friends, right? That is not so much our speed here, because being more interdependent is, I think, something we generally think is pretty cool here. Yes, everyone yell at Devin to get a second monitor. Absolutely. I got to get my life together. And there's a fucking Salvation Army I could just literally steal one from. I could follow my own advice and do that at any time and hook it up. And it would probably would make writing easier to have like a separate notes and like different tabs, all that shit. All right, so today we have a little bit of a attenuated time window. Not really. We have a couple hours really, because I have an appointment for Loki at 2:30. So I do have a hard out around 2:15 Central, which is plenty of time, I think. But we really we've been running like 4 hours long with the chat and everything. So so who knows? Let's see. It looks like some of the chats are not appearing. Like I'm seeing them on the sidebar, but not in the chat on here. That's odd. Okay, Mayvalen says, tell me about the Anime Sickos Discord. How do I get on their Patreon? It's on their website as well. Let me look real quick. Real quickie. Anime Sickos, what's their website? animesickos.com. Is there a link to the Discord? It might be on their Substack. Let me look. Anime Sickos Discord. The website. There we go. Here's our Discord link. Okay, just found it. I can put it in the YouTube chat, I think. Oh wait, I can just do it right here in the pop-up. Oh my goodness. This is so easy. So that's the Anime Sickos Discord. I'm linking that out before our Discord right now. But also for people who have been watching these and like the chat and what people have to say, or are intrigued when I'm alluding to the Discord. We have a Discord server full of people who watch these streams, predominantly very disabled, very transgender, very neurodivergent people, talking about all kinds of different life stuff, from navigating healthcare access to, DIYing HRT to shoplifting to making art to all kinds of stuff. So I'll link that in the chat too, real quick, while I'm in the business of poking around and grabbing links. Edge Peasant says, I think having a therapist who I can actually trust to not institutionalize me has helped with my emotional boundaries a lot. I'm way less likely to just trauma jump and ruminate at my friends. Yeah, it's yeah, that's the thing. Like if you can't trust your therapist, and institutionally there's a lot of reasons not to, it's really tough. Let me turn off do not disturb. Okay, edit invite link. Expire never. There we go. So the next link I'm dropping in here, and this is also helpful for people watching the VOD afterward. This is the link to the Discord server, where everybody who's in the chat normally on these streams, and Maddie and our moderator Callisto hang out from time to time and talk about all types of shit. So you can get into that too. For people who've been watching on YouTube all this time and having to like manually type it in, which is, I know it's sweet people take the effort to do that, because there's always every time the video goes live, there's always new people in the chat, which is in the server, which is really great. Like that people are actually watching these 4-hour ass long videos and enjoying the conversations is a delight. So So thank you very much. I wish my eye would stop looking so like zombie right now. Oh well. Yeah, we're talking about whatever the fuck we're talking about in the Discord. Yes. Red Seraph says I need to get some monitor arms, like a switcher for a work and personal computer. Valen says, I was joking about shoplifting a monitor. Monitor will be impressed if you pull it off. Well, I do have this tote bag that is really huge that I could definitely slip it into. And if it was busy and there was nobody at the front door security wise, I could totally steal a monitor from there. So but they're like $5 probably otherwise. So we'll see. Okay, let's shift a little bit into talking about what this piece is actually about. So this is a piece that went up on my Substack on the 15th, and it is called "A Typology of Insecurities in Non-Monogamy." And kind of the genesis for it was me just thinking about how the conversations about relational challenges in non-monogamy always go back to jealousy. I've already written a jealousy piece that went up earlier this year about like being more jealous, being and communicating that jealousy openly being a good thing. But also like when I really look at what some of the biggest challenges are in like my non-monogamous relationships or the non-monogamous relationships of like my friends going back many, many years, a lot of times it's not that thing that like everybody's obsessed with, jealousy. It's something completely separate, or the word jealousy or words like envy don't really capture what some of the actual relational dynamics at play really are, because a lot of it has to do with a person wanting to respect people's boundaries so much that they find it difficult to communicate, and that not everything goes back to people having these like envious or jealous feelings. Like a lot of times it is stuff that you would see in really close friendships or family dynamics that are challenging as well, plus the added burden of, I think, just having um a relationship structure that is not part of like the mainstream like hegemony. Like your relationship structure looks different and is stigmatized, and so you don't have the tools to navigate it as much, and you're still always seeing things through a little bit of the judgment and lack of accessibility, for lack of a better word, to non-monogamous relationship structures. Those things are getting in the way of the relationship functioning, not like feelings that like monogamous people have, like jealousy. Edge Peasant says, Polysecure was critical in helping me realize I am polyamorous and see how polyamory can work. But I think conversations about non-monogamous relational insecurity is so important. Yeah, like, and so much of it is all like attachment threat and jealousy. Like those are the things that come up over and over again: attachment threat, jealousy, attachment threat, jealousy. And those are real and important to talk about, but there are so many different ways that feeling insecure can manifest. And frankly, a lot of this stuff that we're going to be talking about today, it does show up even in just like friendships too. Like especially if you have like really intense bonds with your friends, or feel disposable potentially to friends because of your own shit. And so I collected a bunch of feedback from a bunch of different people on Tumblr about what some of their biggest insecurities are in their experience of non-monogamy. I've quoted some of them in this piece, and included a few other little links and things and personal examples to try and encourage people to break out of the language of just jealousy and to really say, okay, because jealousy can actually mean a lot of different things, and people use it as a shorthand for a lot of different types of what I think is better understood as insecurity. Like you're feeling some kind of insecurity in the relationship, whether it's attachment insecurity, personal insecurity about your own self-worth or desirability, lack of information, so the uncertainty is making you feel anxious and insecure. Like whatever it is, there's a lot of different forms of insecurity that gum up our relationships, and they're not all jealousy, and they all need to be talked about. And of course, this is not an exhaustive list. This is writing through and organizing a lot of the feedback that I got on Tumblr as best I could, with things that I've kind of seen and could kind of make sense of, and 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 then tapping out once I hit over 5,000 words. So there's, I'm sure, a lot of other stuff that'll come up, and hopefully people will share them in the chat as well. Uh, uh, Edge Present says, I think you have touched on this before, the sort of pressure to be totally non-jealous and saint-like in the poly scene. Yes, that is my be jealous, make demands, want more piece from maybe like May of this year, spring of this year. And that kind of talks about how there's a kind of an emotional self-policing, and I get more into the weeds on why I think that happens in this piece. That I think a lot of times non-monogamous people, we are still judging our relationships based on monogamous views of us, and so we have to make it seem like we don't have the problems they do, or that they would imagine having if they were us, and that we are doing everything for virtuous reasons, and like there's a respectability politics built into it, when I have just always resonated with like, no, we suck. Like, like with gay relationships, with non-monogamous relationships, like I find it much more healthy and like reassuring to hear like, no, we suck, we're fucking messes, we're crazy, we're doing this because we want to, because we need to, or we want to. And that doesn't mean that it's like some like beautiful lofty philosophical project all the time. Like you're showing up to it as a human being who can be petty, immature, not have experience, not know what you're doing, and like being able to talk about that stuff is like important, and to not treat it like the relationship structure is a solution to life's problems. I think there is, like it's like that Mad Men quote that I go back to all the time, like, I'm not a solution to your problem, I'm another problem. And I feel that way about like queerness, like there are people who have this vision of coming into themselves, being queer, being this beautiful liberatory thing, which it is, this awakening of your true self, and throwing off the shackles of society's rules. And it is all those things. But then you also get people who have these beliefs that, like, oh, for example, a lesbian relationship can never be abusive, or it's never going to have the same problems because it's not touched by patriarchy in the way that, say, a straight relationship is. And it's like, no, there are human beings in this. It's like still a fucking mess. And like, if anything, to me, it's more healing to think about like gay abuse and like and unhealthiness in our relationships, and it just being something that you always have to sit with, like this is still reality. And being able to sit in that muck and talk about that muck is very soothing to me. And I think talking, and part of what put me off about polyamory, qua polyamory, for a long time was the people who felt they needed to give it a very respectable sheen for the public eye and for the monogamous audience. And it's understandable why they felt they had to do that. But I think it would have been a lot more reassuring for me to hear people say, it sucks. Sometimes I hate it. Sometimes I don't want to do it. But it's the only thing that makes me not act crazy in my relationships. Like that would have been more more relatable to me. Or just like, well, this is just the, sometimes you don't choose it for a philosophical reason. Sometimes it just is what it is, that you care about multiple different people. You have lots of different things sexually and romantically that you're looking for. And so you do this thing, and it just is what it is. It's not necessarily like because you think it's the best way for life to be. It's just like, that's just how life is. Like most people's lives are non-monogamous lives when you really look at it. And that just is how like human life and relationships evolve on a long enough timeline most of the time. And that doesn't need to be like a good or bad thing, like it just is a thing to talk about. And I, like I said, I find that more reassuring than saying like, oh, this is like something that you are, and it's a choice that you make that's this pure thing, like, no, like that's just not my experience. Nothing, like, nothing's good over here. Everything sucks, everything's hard, and that's just like being a person, like building community sucks too. Like we do these things because we have to, and because there are immense rewards, and we care about each other and we want to connect, and it also sucks so hard a lot of the time. Jealousy is such a nebulous term. It helps to get more specific about how we feel in our relationships and why in order to address them. I agree. Absolutely agree. Male Valence says, I do think that it's possible for non monogamy to solve a few specific problems with non monogamous relationships. Um, yeah, I mean, I think sometimes, I think it's breaking out of the cis het monogamous relationship script, I think solves a lot of problems. Like, it just immediately makes you less insane. I think, speaking for myself and for a lot, I think for a lot of other people, because like suddenly then so many different aspects of what a relationship is and how you are showing up for people is on the table and fair for discussion. And you are free to say things like, I don't want to cohabitate with a partner ever, no matter how much I like them, no matter how long we've been together. Or that cohabitation isn't necessarily the most prime sign of romance or connection. Like you can get along really well with somebody as a housemate, and that might be completely different from like the person that you're like most like ooey gooey in love with, for example. And like divorcing those assumptions, and somebody can still want the like living with a romantic partner thing if that is what suits them. But suddenly now someone is free to say, I don't want to live with you, or I don't want to share Christmases together, or, you know, family holidays or things like that. And it's not, oh, you don't want to be in a relationship with me. I was thinking about this the other day in the context of my last like big straight relationship and the patterns that I've seen in that relationship and in just like things that were a struggle for us together in that relationship and that person I think in their other relationships. And like part of me does kind of wonder with a lot of like straight guys who get on the relationship escalator who are like trying to be basically decent straight guys, um, how many of them who are just like the archetype of like the either like the boyfriend who won't commit or the boyfriend who's kind of halfway in the relationship, halfway out, the emotionally avoidant partner, right? How many of those people in a straight relationship is just somebody who they don't actually want to cohabitate with a partner, or they don't actually want to move up the relationship escalator and get more and more serious. And there's this bundle of commitments that comes with being in a relationship as a straight person on a long enough timeline where you're going to move in together, you're going to spend all these holidays together, you're going to go on trips together, you're going to spend some amount of your evenings and weekends together. How much is very nebulous and people fight about it, like, and how close you can be with other people is nebulous and people fight about it. Um, and then you'll probably get married, you'll probably have kids, you're just kind of inched forward along this progression. And it's and if you're in a relationship like that, it's kind of assumed that if the person doesn't want to move up that next step of the escalator with you, that they actually don't want to be with you at all. And so it's seen as this huge threat to the relationship and big source of insecurity that they don't want to move in a particular direction when it could often be the case that it's like, we got together because I like spending one day with you a week, 1 or 2 days with you a week. I enjoyed going on this one vacation with you. We like spending time together. And actually, I would be good if it was just like that. And sure, that doesn't mean the relationship won't continue to evolve as you get to know the person better, but that doesn't mean that you need to like hook all of these things together in your lives, especially if you never want to like get married or have kids. But but you can't even talk about that in cishet monogamy because it's assumed that means you just don't like the person that much. You don't like them enough. You don't really love them. You don't really respect them, and that just like demolishes the relationship. But once you step outside of that, which itself is a harrowing journey to step outside of that protective structure of that staircase, of that escalator, and to just say, oh, I don't know where my relationships are going, what they're going to be. I don't necessarily ever have that security of this is going to be, you know, my long term primary serious thing. If you can move through that complete breakdown of like meaning and structure and get and deal with it, and get comfortable with it, um, then you can also get comfortable with, oh, this person likes me and they want to spend time with me, but we would never make sense living together, or we like doing certain things together, but they like doing different things with other people. And and we'll appreciate each other more if we see each other once or twice a week or whatever the case might be. Once a, once a month, whatever it is for the relationship. So I do think that like breaking free of those unspoken expectations that are such like a lightning rod, that does solve a lot of problems for a lot of people. It definitely makes me less BPD having like multiple different outlets for social, emotional, sexual, everything. Like, um, but it is also more problems. In the same way that, like, I would say the same thing about transitioning, right? Like, transition isn't a solution to your problem, it's another problem. But, like, if that's your problem, that's your problem. You know what I mean? You can't choose for it to not be your problem. Like, you can't just say, oh, I'm not going to do this transition thing because it's going to be another problem. It's like, no, the transgender is unfortunately a problem in this world that you will have to deal with in your life. And it's not always going to be great to navigate, and it's good to have realistic expectations around that. But also, you'll not everything has to be good and happy. Like, you learn a lot through struggle too. Okay, there's a lot of good stuff in the chat. So let me just catch up here. Non-monogamy is a panacea. Maddie says it's like when weed decriminalization becomes weed is a panacea. Right. Yeah. And medical marijuana advocates, they fell into that respectability politics as well, where they felt that because weed had such an unfairly demonized public image, they had to say it has no possibility of any negative effects ever, which we know is not true. If you have like psychotic features at all, it can be really bad. If you're using weed to dissociate from everything in your life all the time, it is not necessarily good for you. You might not want to do that. It's great for a lot of things, and it's not so great for a lot of things. It just is what it is. Like, it's on this grand scale of things, yeah, it's a lot less like physiologically damaging than almost any substance you can think of. But that doesn't mean that it can't make somebody feel way more depressed, feel worse pain. It doesn't fix everything. It's just a tool. Male Valence says, for example, a problem solved by non-monogamy, falling in love with multiple people and not leaving your first partner or cheating on them. Yeah, yeah. And like for me, like in the times that I've cheated, it was always an insecurity thing. It wasn't like, oh, I fell in love with this person, or like it was always like, I'm not getting my needs met in this relationship, so I'm gonna step out. And like in non-monogamy, you can just do that. That's just normal. Like if it's not expected that one relationship will fulfill all of your possible needs, or that somebody will be available to you 100% of the time on the level that you might like ideally want. And so you can, if there's a mismatch there in availability or what somebody can fulfill, you kind of just keep looking. And that can go to a very objectifying place of just using people like slots that fill a hole in your life. And that is something that I sometimes see non-monogamous people do, and I think that's very gross. But I think on balance, most people understand and have the same approach with like their friend relationships, where nobody can be everything to everyone. We're going to have conflicts, we're going to let each other down, and we're not the same people. And so it's good to have people in your life that bring out different sides to you and give you the freedom to express those different sides to you. And that includes like sexually or romantically. So why not? And it takes the pressure off your existing relationships to be something that they're not if you have that ability. Oh yeah, you already said it, Mavel. It's not being able to meet all your partner's needs. Yeah, it's not a personal failure, and it's not. And then there's less resentment there. You can just be, you can love the person in the way that you love them, in the space that you love them, and then they can do what they need elsewhere. Hey, Bia, who says, hi, thanks for streaming this. I tend to mask by over-preparing, so the respectable, ethical polyamory stuff really fucks with me. Really appreciate this framing. Yes, and fucking, like, the therapy language thing of it all, where people feel like they can't have a conversation in their relationships that isn't like, I feel this, and of course it's nothing that you did, and here's why, and I've completely internally therapized where this insecurity comes from and why it's a problem, And now that I've said it, I'm gonna receive reassurance from you and immediately feel better, and that's it. Like this, like you have to be able to be in mess with each other sometimes. Like you have to have feelings that aren't fair and therapized, because that's not what's actually happening in your head. Like sometimes you are feeling big things that are hard to even put into words, and like sometimes you're gonna make mistakes and do bad things. Like we're not all saints, and we can still do this thing. Again, to go back to Interview with the Vampire, we're all amoral, lonely vampires who are amongst each other because we need each other, not because we're all great. Like we suck and are evil a lot of the time, or amoral, But we need each other. So let's make it work. And also, that's sexier anyway. Like it's just sexier if people are a little bad or a little messy. Ace T says driving to pick up new anxiety meds, and I just wanted to say I'm so happy to have caught you live for once. Welcome, Ace T. Thanks for being here, and thanks for catching the YouTube stream. We got a good turnout right now, so that's wonderful. Thank you everybody for your patience with the switching formats and stuff. Yeah, so much of monogamy culture is all or nothing. Yeah, it's and it's not even necessarily all that you want, like you can feel in like a cishet monogamous relationship insecure in the relationship because the person doesn't want to marry you when you don't want to get married. And it's like it's so stupid. Like it's you're like both holding each other hostage with all these like expectations. Thanks for the subscription, Eden Lehman. Welcome. Absolutely. So there's talk in the chat from Waluigi about the difficulty of building community. What do you mean by hating community but then idealized on building one? I would say I don't idealize building one. I think I see a lot of that. I mean, maybe in some writing in the past, I've certainly talked a lot about community as a necessary thing for us. And but I've also written things that are very critical of community as it's actually practiced. I think a lot of things that call themselves community are not that. And I think Emily Carrier's posts about how the left, queer people on the left, say a lot about the importance of building community and community as a means of survival. And unfortunately, what that actually amounts to in practice a lot of the time is you need to make yourself likable and you need to be social, because then somebody will maybe show up and take care of you. The community support becomes a thing you have to earn through being fun, generous to other people, sociable, familiar, somebody that people see a lot. And if you don't like to socialize or you can't socialize, or you're not cool in some way, then you're not necessarily going to get any of that. Like a lot of things that call itself community are not any kind of like lofty political project. It's like a bunch of people who all go to the same like drag shows together or whatever, and are all marketing their drag shows, or like I'm just speaking to the stuff that I see on my social feeds, right? It's like people selling their zines, people advertising their drag shows and their DJ sets, like people who are just developing a lot of social cachet in like cool, sexy, young, queer communities. And that's not what community is. Even if sometimes, yeah, they'll pass around a mutual aid fundraiser for somebody who they like and think is cool who got kicked out of their housing. Like, what about the people who the community thinks sucks when they're in that situation? We don't show up for them. And we don't necessarily have the means to show up for everyone either. So that is part of the problem. And I think I've said this many times, a lot of the decisions people make are based on what will get them social belonging. That is a way that humans have gotten their needs met for as long as at least human societies have existed, making ourselves appealing to others in some way and getting along and collaborating with others is part of how human beings survive. And that isn't necessarily an inherently good, pure, beautiful thing either. People fight and jockey for status and oust people that they don't like and have all kinds of problems with each other. And we can tie a lot of ills back to capitalism, but also like I don't think it's helpful to think of humans as like inherently pure actors either. People do things out of insecurity if they feel like a resource is scarce or they feel not accepted. Or sometimes people just want to hurt other people. Like some of us have sadistic impulses. That's um, what's that quote? I am human, nothing is alien to me. Like it's uh, it's all inside of us. Those capacities, I believe. Is amoral and moral nihilism the same? Amoral, I would say, means existing outside of a moral system that's more descriptive, and moral nihilism would be kind of like a philosophical belief that morals don't matter. Um, so to me, there's a slight distinction, but that's because I'm thinking of what I'm saying as being less prescriptive. But you could argue that I'm advocating in some. I don't know that I'm advocating for moral nihilism. I'm not telling people not to care about things. I'm just trying to get people to have an analysis of like how the world operates that does not require or presume that human beings around you are moral. Like you can have a moral system, um, if you like, but I think it's not rooted in reality and a little foolhardy to think that other human beings are predominantly motivated by a consistent moral system. We really don't have any evidence of that, and I don't think we need to. I don't think it's the end of the world or the end of like humanity for that to be the case. Eden Lehman said, I just joined by seeing this on my feed while watching news on Palestine. Saw the flag on your door and said, yes, deconstructing Zionism and monogamy. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, these things, yeah, let's talk about how much monogamy is a colonial construct. Like, where does monogamy come from? And we'll talk about this in the piece, which we will get to soon in the interest of time. But monogamy is a structure of property ownership. Thanks for the subscription, Bina Barna. Marriage is all about the exchanging of women as property and women as the source of creating new heirs. So we see, and it so much comes down to the passing on of property in history as one of the major sources of inequality, gender inequality, social hierarchy in general. Again, read Dawn of Everything, read Debt the First 5,000 Years. There's so many great anthropological books on this stuff. But essentially, when you have a relationship structure set up as a way of transferring property or ensuring that you have heirs that are of yours, that belong to you through like marriage, they're like legitimate heirs who pass your property on to you, then obviously there's much more of a degree of controlling women's sexual behaviors, because then you need to make sure that you know who like the biological parents of a child always are, because that determines who the property goes on to. If marriage to a woman is securing all kinds of ownership of land, titles to land, ownership of human beings, because you're an enslaver, or it's being used to negotiate diplomatic deals and things like that, there is so much more control over women's body autonomy and movement, and puts them inherently in a second class position. And so that is the stuff that like monogamy comes from. And monogamy was not like historically expected of men in these structures very much at all. When we're really talking about the type of like monogamy that is like rooted in Christianity and that has been kind of pushed on the world through colonization, that is what monogamy traditionally means. And trying to salvage it and trying to salvage like marriage from that is kind of impossible, because the norms built into it are very clearly about women as property. That's why even like today, decades after multiple waves of feminist movements, a majority of women who get married still take their husbands' names. And even if they don't, the kids still have the husbands' names, because it all goes back to the transfer of property and the propagation of like a paternal line and passing on a paternal inheritance. Like that is still what people are acting out, even in cases where it absolutely does not fit a person's economic situation, their class positioning, their political ideals, or anything. They just still do that. That's still what's accepted. That's still what's expected for them too. And that's like, and that's just baked into every aspect of how people like manage their monogamous relationships and the expectations that they have for them. Uh, and yeah, so an inherently very colonial thing, and that is not how relationships have been structured in a lot of different parts of the world and among many different indigenous groups of people. Not to say that there aren't things like marriage ceremonies or like commitment or even having different social positions for men and women, and not to say that there isn't like patriarchy outside of like, you know, European colonizers, but there's like, we don't even have really the freedom to critique that stuff because it's been so destroyed by colonization um, in so many different ways. So even having like open discussions about all of the different ways people can structure gender and relationships is something that has been made as difficult as possible because colonization has said like there's only one acceptable way to be in relationships with one another and nothing else exists or ever did. Nick Nevin says it's wild that just being in community is radical. Well, here we go. This is relevant to what we're just talking about too. The monogamous relationship structure is a way of dividing up labor as well as property and social responsibilities for one another. So we have the structure of the relationship and the structure of the family in, let's say, just speaking for myself, like American white society, as the primary way that people get their needs met is through their family and through their marriage, which makes you part of the family and furthers the family. Um, and so that means that anything that works kind of against that is it's something that's not really widely accommodated for in societies. Sharing resources with people you're not legally related to is considered weird. Like that's charity. It's not actual like interdependence. Living with friends, living with loved ones, having family structures that are a bunch of different families and generations all together. Um, you know, having food being communally prepared. All of these things are seen as kind of radical, and our society, as we're most of us are living in it today, is just not set up for it. Even in terms of just like the construction of people's houses and how a house is set up, kind of works against people building community because it's so isolated and requires so much constant maintenance alone in the house. Mm-hmm. Wesley Twiggs says, being married has been the best thing in my life. I couldn't imagine being with anyone else. I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, that's still very much like, you know, as I get into the piece, I'm a real lover girl. Like, you know, like the idea of somebody wanting to be like really there for me on that level is still something that's very appealing to me, even though when I look at my actual track record of experience, it's never actually been great. But yeah, and nothing that we're saying here is actually counter to you being married. Like we have some very, very non-monogamous married people in the chat as well. Air Gender, hello, says, read a kind of shitty article about how emotional hunger is the opposite of love, and it was fucking me up a bit, but maybe it's not immoral, doesn't matter if it is to be needy. Yeah, fuck that. Fuck that shit. That is fucking. A lot of that stuff goes back to a lot of like therapized hatred of things like BPD people, autistic people, insecure people. Hello, Christina. Thanks for the subscription. Like, it is. Emotional hunger, what is that? Like, that is a very individualistic framing, as if you're taking away something from other people by needing human contact. No, that's not the case. Like, that is a very individualistic framing that does not match how most human beings who are so deeply social feel. Like, a lot of people want to feel needed. A lot of people want to be annoyed by people that need a lot from them, and that would make them feel more secure and would help meet a lot of their emotional needs. People want that. A lot of people, especially today, I think, are really suffering from an inability to ever express needs at all, because they're afraid of trauma dumping, because they're afraid of being too much or too annoying. And demanding more is something that is very heavily pathologized by psychiatry because it is a resistance to the existing order. You know, like whether it's hysterical women or women who were unhappy in a oppressive marriage being deemed hysterical in like the 1800s for wanting more sex or wanting to not be a housewife or wanting more freedom, whatever it is, all of those things usually, to somebody who is relationally insecure, socially insecure, let's say an autistic person existing on the fringes of society because they are excluded, being really insecure and needing lots of reassurance, and that person being called BPD and being called like demanding and like even like something that the fact that like having a favorite person is seen as inherently toxic and controlling. If you have the BPD label put on you, like why is it inherently a bad thing to like love someone very deeply and to like thinking about them? If you're not hurting them, if you're not making any demands of them that they can't meet, who is harmed by you like crushing on someone hard or even making a human being in your life your special interest? Like that's not like it's okay for us to care about each other and think about each other a lot. So yeah, fuck that shit. Fuck that article air gender. Um it's and I really do hate when that stuff becomes normalized in polyamory and non-monogamy discussions, that you can't be needy and crazy and demanding and insecure and want lots of contact with people and need lots of reassurance. Like you absolutely can. If somebody, if that's not their speed, if they don't want to be with you, they don't have to be with you. But you should show up as your actual self with whatever that entails. And you will, if you're afraid to ever articulate any of that, then that means you could be in a relationship with someone who wants you to be doing all of that shit that you're most afraid of doing. And you both never actually connect on this wonderful, deep level, intense level that you'd want to, and have all the security that comes from that, of really laying bare like your least flattering aspects and having that loved. Like that's such a beautiful experience to have. But if you never even take the risk of even trying to let it happen because you're afraid of seeming like too much, like at a certain point, how is it this any different from like women reading like He's Not That Into You in like 2001? Like, are we really still in a Sex in the City episode? We're just in like a weird polyamorous one. Like get real, you know? Like we can do better than that. People who feel things very strongly are like very alive, and I find that very admirable and very beautiful. Been hurting for better articles since that first one I found. Still kind of haunting me. Yeah, I mean it's haunting that people they have to think about people seeing and thinking about you that way, and it is definitely like a minefield that you have to kind of tiptoe around in your relationships because you don't know if people are going to get like freaked out by really basic like expressions of emotion sometimes. BS says husband equals home plus owner. We have basically not moved away from this. Yep, that's true. Emotional hunger sounds like neurotypical bullshit. Absolutely. Very, very stigmatizing people for feeling too much or feeling the wrong things in the wrong ways, which we don't like to do around here. Eden Lehman says, strike for Gaza, withhold your money. Yes. BDS. And when you can't BDS, shoplift instead. I didn't just say that, YouTube. People seem to be so afraid of their own feelings, and that isolates people more. Yeah, and I think social media has, social media infographic complex has kind of made that stuff a little bit worse, or facilitated people having everybody in the world's worst possible judgment of a hypothetical thing they could do is accessible to them and being beamed into their brain all day long, which makes it really hard for somebody to, especially if you also have all kinds of trauma or fear of being socially disposed of because you're autistic. It gets really scary to air out what you need and what you feel. Red Seraph says, that really speaks to me. I hone in on people really hard as interesting and encompassing, but I'm also very careful about not causing harm or distress about that either. Yeah, this is something I get into a little bit in the piece that, like, I think even in non monogamy, we sometimes think it's a problem if one person thinks about the other person more or feels more about the other person, even like that, that you should like each other the same amount And what I would suggest is that no two people ever care about each other in the exact same way or think about each other in the exact same way. Certainly not in most monogamous relationships. And it's only a problem where there's a disconnect in how people are treating each other. But if you enjoy, if you have a partner who is your muse and you enjoy making like beautiful paintings of them and studying the lines of their face and just thinking about them, that's a beautiful thing. And if as long as they are comfortable with that and it's not causing y'all problems, it's okay for one person to think about the other more than the other does. Like that's not actually a problem because thoughts are not crimes, thoughts are not material. If you're treating each other well, it's actually fine. If one person just happens to be wired in a way of being more obsessive or doting or whatever. That's some people also just think more, period, than other people. So then they might also think more about you than if you're somebody who doesn't like really like lock in and ruminate, and that's fine. Uh, yeah, and like you're not going to get to a place of higher relational security or emotional stability needing less reassurance if you're being shamed for how you feel. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, let's get into sharing the screen on here because I want to make sure we have enough time to read the whole piece before Loki's uh, doctor's appointment. She needs to get her little shotties. So this piece is on my Substack, drdevinprice.substack.com. It's called A Typology of Insecurities in Non-Monogamy. You can read it for free at drdevinprice.substack.com. All my work is always free there forever. But I'm just going to be reading this piece aloud to you for accessibility and all that good stuff. But please keep the reactions and shares in the chat going. My radiator is going off really loud right now, so I'm really sorry if you have to hear really bad hissing from that. It sounds really bad. So, a typology of insecurities in non-monogamy because jealousy and envy aren't all there is. Our opening image for this piece is a picture from Unsplash by Roger Chapman of 3 ducks in the air across a cloudy sky, 2 mallards and what's the other kind of duck called? I'm not hearing you. You're not hearing me? Let me fix that. No, it says the audio's going. Oh, you're not hearing the radiator. My bad. Whoopsie. Thank you. Good. I'm glad. So I went with some kind of corny imagery here. Like when you're doing cover images or like stock photos for pieces on non-monogamy, they're all mallards. That's right. They're all mallards here. Yeah, but there's like what's the like quote unquote female duck called mallards or is that the species? I thought mallard was the green ones, but shows you what I know. But there's this idea or this symbology of birds mating for life and being monogamous. So I went with a lot of imagery of like 3 birds or like multiple groupings of birds that are not looking like a monogamous pair to illustrate non-monogamy here. That's my little corny boots moment. Okay, mallard is the species. Okay, I thought that was what the boys were called, but thank you. Yeah, that's what she meant, was that the radiator was not bothering her. My bad. Envy is wanting what someone else has. Jealousy is the fear of losing what you have. It's a pretty commonly accepted truism within the polyamorous world. You can find examples of envy and jealousy being contrasted this way here, here, and here. This is links to a few different polyamory articles and like subreddits talking about jealousy. And though in theory non-monogamous people should welcome the discussion of any challenging feelings that rise up in our relationships, as a group we tend to find the soft, easily reassured form of jealousy to be far more sympathetic than something that can look a lot more feral or unfair. It is obvious why polyamorous communities feel the need to distinguish between healthy, expressible, easily remedied forms of jealousy and toxic, controlling, unfixable envy. In other words, the bad kind of jealousy that we are quick to disavow. What do you do about jealousy is one of the most common and annoying questions that the non-monogamous get asked from people outside our community. The fact that jealousy happens and cannot always be fixed is a problem that we are expected to answer for, a bug in our relationship structures, whereas monogamous people get to see jealousy as a feature that helps preserve relationships. That is something that I really want to highlight here, that occurred to me recently. I'm sure many non-monogamous writers have talked about this already, but when we get asked about jealousy, there is this awful double standard that we are held to as non-monogamous people, where if a monogamous person experiences jealousy, that is seen as a sign of commitment. That is seen as a sign of them fighting to defend their relationship. It can be even kind of noble and triumphant. Like, I'm thinking right now of Beyonce's Lemonade, because I was just watching like a performance of one of those songs about wearing the other woman's skin. And it's this incredibly like moving, triumphant, defiant piece. And I love Lemonade. It's one of my favorite Beyonce works, don't get me wrong. But there is this aspect of you are defending the monogamous relationship structure with your insecurity. Your insecurity is, in fact, one of the things that keeps you together as a couple. And historically, if we really want to talk about the patriarchal roots of it, it quite literally is men's jealousy helps motivate them to control and restrict women to preserve the monogamous relationship structure. So in the monogamous world, they still to this day see jealousy in their relationships as a feature, as a tool of preservation for the relationship, and as healthy. Whereas in non-monogamous relationships, because we are not fighting to preserve the monogamous closed relationship structure at all costs, no matter what, preserve your property, jealousy is a little bit more difficult to talk around. It is an unpleasant emotion that can evoke some of those controlling aspects and isolating aspects that they have in monogamy, and we're supposed to supposedly not feel it either. We have to answer to the monogamous audience, the monogamous viewer of us, like, how do you deal with this feeling that no longer is helpful in preserving your relationship? Whereas for them, this emotion that just happens, they get to view it as something that is important to the relationship. And so we're always on the back foot when we talk about jealousy because of this, because we're having to say that this emotion that is really unpleasant and can be really controlling, when it's exercised under patriarchy, monogamous people can have an attachment to it and still think that it's good. And we are challenging the monogamous relationship structure, and we're challenging some of those norms of controlling and isolating partners. And that also means that we kind of have to distance ourselves from jealousy. And it makes no sense, because human beings experience that emotion, and that's not the same thing actually as behaving in a controlling way. Male ducks are called drakes. Female ducks are called ducks or hens. All of those ducks in the photo are mallard ducks. Oh, go fucking figure. Good to know. Good shit. The monogamous majority is forever judging non-monogamous relationships according to monogamous ideals, presuming that relationships that last a long time are always better, more successful relationships than ones that are brief, for example. Or believing that there is always one relationship that is the most meaningful one, usually because it looks the most like a monogamous straight relationship, because it involves the sharing of property, for instance, or because two partners are married. I'm gonna make my font a little bit bigger. Hell, even the fact that jealousy is the primary concern that monogamous people have about non-monogamy comes from patriarchal capitalism's framing of a partner as property, and the resulting view that maintaining access to that property is the most vital thing. Patriarchal capitalism values the solidity of a romantic bond because it is easier for women to be exploited as unpaid housekeepers and child rearers that way, and because it prevents individuals from building deeper networks of community. Capitalism and colonialism relies on the construct of private property ownership. I've talked about this before in my piece, A Nation of Settler Militias, where the creation of private property is what led to the displacement of a lot of people in Europe, who then became settler militias here, colonizing Turtle Island and killing lots of indigenous people. And there is this chain effect, basically, of or this domino effect of property ownership, meaning that there is more of a harsh divide between people and the people around them. There's more competition for resources rather than collaboration and sharing of them, which leads to more violence and more oppression. Organized violence, not violence just between individuals fighting over a territory, but usually militias, armies, nation states, men as a construct versus women as a construct. And so that furthers oppression and drives isolation. And so that's part of why we talk about community being a really important thing. To go back to your question, Waluigi Bowser, community, I think what most of us are aspiring for is something that is not hierarchical, that is not organized under the aegis of a state or a military or some hierarchical or institutional body that can control people and limit their freedom. The idea is to become less dependent on those things, and community kind of flattens some of those hierarchies. Or it should. In practice, do the communities we form actually flatten hierarchy and ensure that everybody gets resources, no matter how cool or uncool or powerful or weak or productive or unproductive they are? No. In practice, the people who end up getting the most resources are the people who have the most social cachet or are already wealthy, are already conventionally attractive, whatever. But, and that's why we're critical of it, I think. That's why I'm critical of it. But in theory, we're moving towards community as something that will help destroy some of these hierarchies. That you can get your needs met through a nuclear family living out in the suburbs that's super isolated, or through a more communal living situation where you are free to come and go as you please and you don't belong to anyone, and your family is what you choose. But all of the laws and physical structures of our world push people into that monogamous nuclear family, private home, one partner kind of setup, and seeing your partner as your way to get the resources you need. These priorities are deeply seated within the culture, and so most people still believe a meaningful relationship must involve an enduring commitment and the working through of all tough feelings and incompatibilities so the relationship can be maintained. How many times have you seen straight people do this kind of thing? Usually the women, because the power is tipped against them, where they are saying, oh, a relationship is so much work. A marriage is so much work, but it's worth it. It's worth it. You just have to keep working on it. You just have to keep choosing each other. You just have to keep showing up. And it can sound so beautiful, and it can be true, but like a lot of times when you hear that, it is one partner in a straight relationship just folding in more and more and more of herself so that she can tolerate still being with someone who mistreats her, and changing herself to be able to do that and to be acceptable to that partner, and how destructive that is. And that it's rooted in this presumption that a long relationship is always better. And oh sure, me and my grandma and my grandpa and grandpa, they used to fight, but they were together 70 years, and that's because they always chose each other at the end of the day. And it's like, well, sure, that's lovely, but also your grandmother like didn't have the option of no fault divorce when she was 30 and 40 years old. So like, is that actually what she would do today? Probably not. And maybe that's a good thing. Sometimes a relationship being dead is better, and it is inevitable that over the course of a long time knowing somebody, they will continue to evolve as a person, and the dynamics between them and others will change. It's very hard for the monogamous to get such things. And I think even for non-monogamous people too. Sometimes a relationship just does not work. Sometimes you just have wants that don't line up, and you can't process your way out of it. This is a screen grab from Pet Sematary. It's the Munsters, the actor who played Herman Munster in the movie Pet Sematary, saying sometimes dead is better. It's just a little stupid meme. Nick Nevin says, this is my deepest grief as a married person with a womb. The shadow of being held as property and internalized shame for having desire outside of my husband because it will destroy this nuclear family. I think those feelings are absolutely not distinct to what kind of anatomy a person has. I think there are a lot of people, people in their relationships who are women, who are in a gender minority position, who feel very evaluated based on their reproductive capacity or availability to men. I know certainly a lot of trans women who feel that exact insecurity, and it is because they don't have that womb that society says is like the defining feature of a serious monogamous commitment or a serious relationship. And so those things being these things being equated all comes from like very deep-seated patriarchal conditioning about here's what being in a relationship means. And basically if you are a feminized, or as we sometimes talk about in the stream, fagotized person, a person who is in a gender minority position, be you trans, non-binary, or a woman, like there is this, you're gonna get that message that you are supposed to make yourself desirable to this idea of what men are, which of course is not the reality of them because they're human beings. That if you are not making yourself into like this perfect conduit for a partner, that you're somehow failing. Yeah, it's deep-seated shit. Edge Peasant says this also ties into how society does not support single people, especially not single women. Right, exactly. Because the reason that you have children is to further the wealth and the family line of a usually white or light-skinned man, right? Like it's all about maintaining social status and hierarchy. And so if your child does not belong to a man, then you as like a single mother are societally worthless. And that child isn't like furthering like a high class position. And so society isn't going to give anything to you because you're not doing that reproductive labor for a man, and not for a powerful man in particular. In general, we non-monogamous people feel a pressure to defend ourselves against monogamous people's worst stereotypes. We insist up and down that our relationships are always ethical, while no one ever has to insist that their monogamy is ethical. This is why I never use the term ENM, or ethical non-monogamy. We act as if our capacity for care is limitless and that love is the only reason we pursue multiple bonds, as if there is anything wrong with lacking an interest in romance or only wanting sex. And because monogamous people are so obsessed with asking us if we get jealous, we insist up and down that we really don't, not all that much, seriously. And even if we do, jealousy is not really a big deal. Here's my most recent piece on that subject from May of this year. Be jealous, make demands, want more. Here's to a passionate non-monogamy where things aren't always fair and people are needy. And the idea here in this piece is you can't go into your relationships trying to perform that you are like more ascended than you are. If you're coming from monogamy and you have certain expectations or needs, if you have certain insecurities, you have them. Like you got to accept yourself as you are in them and like bring them up. And also not every relationship needs to be this perfectly fair, parceled out, like scooping distribution of like your time and your energy. Like you can have different needs and demands in different relationships, but you do have to just express that. The truth is less respectable. There are non-monogamous people who do get fumingly envious. Some jealousies cannot be fixed by putting more quality time on the polycule's shared Google Calendar. And some of the biggest sources of tension in our relationships aren't even jealousy or envy at all. When I look at my relationships and those of my non-monogamous peers, jealousy and envy are rarely the predominant problems. In fact, the really challenging emotions that tend to actually get in the way of relating to one another tends to be stuff that our monogamous critics wouldn't even think to bring up. Feelings like not wanting to be as close with your metamor as your partner wants you to be, for example, or worrying that every person you're dating is mad at you for not giving them enough time. These are some of the real day-to-day anxieties of being in multiple relationships. Problems that I think are more easily summarized as forms of insecurity than they are types of jealousy. Insecurity, I think, is a much more like encompassing word, and a lot of things that get called jealousy would be better described as insecurity, more precisely described as a type of insecurity. And we need to be able to talk about them just as frequently as we talk and philosophize and process about jealousy itself, because they affect how we behave and build our connections. And so, with the aim of lubricating some of these conversations, I offer this list of common insecurities in non monogamy. Uh, so, before we dive in, let me catch up on the chat. Sasha says, being raised by a single mother sucked between the way she was treated by everyone around her and the way she treated me as a result of being unsupported and extremely traumatized. Oh my God. Yeah. That's where you get a lot of like parentification or specification of kids because all of the responsibilities for maintaining like a life, a family, and a home are supposed to be offloaded into the nuclear family, two people, in this very like conventionally gendered, very like limiting capitalist structure that of course is like not how a majority of people have ever lived, but you know, that's what we're taught to expect. When you have one person who's missing from that equation so there's only one adult being expected to do it all, it is completely unsustainable. It's completely isolating. Like there's not enough money, there's not enough time, there's not enough resources. And so it almost necessarily gets offloaded onto a kid in that structure. And it's so difficult. Um, she used to joke about me at age 3 saying, "Mommy, sometimes it feels like I'm the parent and you're the child." That was so funny to her. It's dark stuff. It is dark stuff. You've probably heard of the book Silently Seduced. When children become partners to their parents. But anybody who's had that kind of experience, it's called covert incest, but it does not need to be sexual or explicitly sexual. It's about using your child as your partner, your therapist, your confessor, your co-parent. They talk about it a lot on the book on this book a lot on the podcast Mental Illness Happy Hour. Because the host of it is a covert incest survivor, and I found these conversations very helpful as someone who was just very treated like a secondary spouse, therapist, whatever by my dad. So for people who resonate with a little bit of that stuff, I think sometimes, and my heart really does go out to a lot of the single moms who end up doing this because I understand that how like lonely and unsupported they felt, that like all of the burdens of being emotionally present for a child and the financial stuff and the logistical stuff in a world where you were probably raised to believe that a man was supposed to take care of you, and then you don't get that and you think still that you need someone to take care of you, and you have this big like emotional hole. And you were also told that parenthood is supposed to be your great divine calling. And so it is a very logical progression from that to say I have this huge gaping hole of hurt and unmet need in me, and I'm doing so much and I'm worn down all the time and I'm not functioning well. I'm going to try to fill that hole with my child, and love for my child and being really emotionally inappropriate with my child. Like I feel so much genuine sympathy for people who have done that stuff to their kids. I can totally understand how in a lonelier time in the world where it was harder to find other people, like, and you didn't have a choice about winding up a parent, I could totally see myself having done something like that, you know, because I'm codependent as fuck with my cat. So I would have done that to a baby too, you know? Um, and it would have been way worse and darker and awful, but it is so destructive. And is also, you know, an experience that I have had. So, yeah, yeah, it's rough. Nick Nevin says there's a lot of passive trauma that children of single moms take on, and having a language to describe disenfranchised grief that comes from social stratification isn't taught to us. Absolutely. Yeah, and so people just see it through an individualistic lens, and they say, my mom was a narcissist, or my mom was histrionic. And it's like, I mean, I'm not going to apologize for anybody's shitty mom. You can go no contact, you can be glad they die, you can be glad they suffer, they can have been a horrible person to you. It's just that also structurally this comes from somewhere. Um, and um, and it is sad. Closet Demon says, not like it's as bad in nuclear families, but still most of the time two people cannot manage an entire household. And so there's still parentification. I'd argue that's part of the point of the nuclear family. Absolutely. Absolutely. The nuclear family is a division of labor that almost that like when you look at like what some of the earliest nuclear families were, it goes back to private property ownership and agriculture. You would have children to be your farm workers. Like that was very much a labor solution to the quote unquote problem of not enslaving people anymore. And also to the eradication of the commons. Like, you know, in many places in even, you know, colonization central Europe, they used to have common grounds where people all lived and worked the earth together, and they could live there for free, relatively speaking. There wasn't rent, and they would do labor on the grounds, and they would live communally. They would share meals, they would share festivals, many different like days off, like up over 100 days off every year, celebrations, religious ceremonies, communal raising of children. Witches are there like to help people with things like childcare pains and with like spiritual practices, right? Like it was a very different structure than how society looks today. And then people were pushed off the commons, and that was made into private property, and suddenly you had to pay rent, which means you had to do industrial labor in order to earn your right to stay alive. And suddenly the grounds weren't worked by people working it together to at least some degree of mutual benefit. It was people who were either hired to do it or forced to do it because they were children. And so, you know, the isolation of children in the nuclear family so that they could be used as a source of labor is definitely, again, a feature of the system rather than a bug. Absolutely. That's a great point, Closet Demon. And multi-generational families have these kinds of problems and also unique problems of their own. It's bad. Yes. When family is this isolated thing and it's about property, blood, lineage, it is gonna be toxic, I think, in a lot of different ways, versus people choosing freely whom to associate with and having a lot of different options. Airgender says, see, my mom was parentified and tried very hard not to do that, but she leaned too hard into the father archetype skill tree, so it was more isolating for me. Yeah. So instead of like pouring that excessive needy kind of parental love onto you, more hands off, and that still doesn't meet needs. There's a really great essay series on pre-industrial peasant life on something pedantry on Substack. Oh, please link that in the Piscord later, because I would love to read that. All right, let's dive into some types of insecurity. Fear of seeming jealous. I know I just went on and on about how not everything in non-monogamy is about being jealous, but some of it's about not being jealous, but still feeling bad that you seem jealous, or that you might be seen as jealous, or that you're not jealous enough. Again, because we're hit so hard with the external judgment of the jealousy-obsessed monogamous public. Because non-monogamous people face relentless judgment and questioning about the presence of jealousy in our relationships, we tend to self-police ourselves out of expressing anything that could even sound like jealousy, such as neutral curiosity about a partner's other partners or their activities, interest in what is on a partner's schedule, and more. I end up worried that I'm not performing the right degree of unconcern when my partners are flirting with people or interacting with other partners, and I'm there, says one anonymous Tumblr user. The only thing I'm ever really covering up is my really strong nosiness about what's going on. But by covering up their neutral curiosity, they miss a chance to get excited about flirty new connections with their partner. This can prevent us from ever making requests of our partners. We might never bring up that we crave more time, more sex, or to enjoy a specific experience with a partner. I have argued in my previous piece that we should all collectively get more comfortable making jealous requests of our partners to prevent these frustrations from fermenting. When we become too obsessed with avoiding even the appearance of emotional sin, we wind up creating artificial walls until it genuinely gets hard for partners to know how much we like them or that we'd like to get closer. If you can't compliment the photo of a partner and their sweetie on the mantle, if you dive out of the line of sight the second they open their phone or laptop, If you feel afraid to even ask them what their plans are for the day, then you may be far too insecure about how your feelings look, which is always a barrier to genuine relationship development. Everybody is trying to be the Bodhisattva of polyamory, is how one non-monogamous Tumblr user explained this phenomenon to me. So completely detached from any like worldly desires. But not everybody wants to be dating an enlightened being without desire. That does not sound sexy to me. Sometimes we like partners being curious about us and our other relationships. And shockingly, we may even want them to be jealous sometimes too. Male Valence says, yeah, this section would be me if I were dating. I want to know what someone is doing because I'm nosy and curious as fuck. Yeah, like I want to know everything. You know, I want to know everything. I want to hear all the lore and understand how everything fits together. And of course, it's not necessarily my business, but I love when somebody does trust me with that stuff. I love to chew on it. But like this is something that bothered me a little bit in Polysecure. Jessica Fern talks a lot about like having to enforce boundaries about talking about your partners to your other partners and not taking it as a given that you can really vent or share anything. And it's a good thing to be mindful of, but I just can't imagine like having a bunch of relationships where you can't ever even talk about the relationship with the other person. Like, I don't know how you would even have a relationship with someone if you can't talk to them about the other important people in your life and shit that's going on. Like, how could like how do you even talk about what you did that week, like, or your day, or like what's on your mind? Like, you have to be able to talk about that stuff and be curious and excited for the other person, and to sometimes say, oh, you guys did that thing, I wanted to go to that thing, you know, like that should be able to be on the table, I think. HC, I'm so curious how other people talk to each other in intimate relationships. Yeah, absolutely. Insecurity that a partner isn't jealous. I'm poly and gotta say the most interesting and perplexing jealousy adjacent insecurity I've ever encountered was I once had a partner who'd get angry at me for not being jealous enough, one anonymous Tumblr user tells me. When their partner would go on dates, Anon would simply wish them well and not be bothered by it. But this inspired months of anger in their partner, who finally revealed that they wanted to feel, quote, wanted enough for their partner to be possessive of them. This is very like monogamy brain, I think, very cishet brain. You know, I want like a demanding, controlling, big, strong man to want me. Otherwise, I don't feel desirable. Like, that's kind of what that's giving to me. But I also don't think that that's actually a bad thing for an individual person to have, like, inherently. Like, we're not going to all transcend being in a society. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay to take some really bad, toxic, cishet cultural conditioning and make something fun and sexy out of it. But you do have to, like, be conscious of that and, like, communicate it. So you can, I think it's perfectly fine to tell a partner, I want you to act possessive. Or, like, if you feel these feelings of jealousy, I want to hear about it. And I think it's hot, and let's fuck about it later. Or let's talk about it. But expecting to somebody to be jealous when they just aren't, that's a little too monogamy brained. That's being too prescriptive about that stuff. But for some people, witnessing some degree of jealousy in their partners is hot, or it makes them feel prioritized, and the absence of jealousy may make them feel less important. Some non-monogamous people who do experience jealousy also feel emotionally inferior to their less jealous partners. In this case, it's not the jealousy itself that is the problem. It's the perceived disparity in jealous feelings and the jealous partner's insecurity that they must be worse at non-monogamy because they're not bathed in feel-good compersion chemicals all the time. This insecurity can prevent a person from ever speaking about their jealousies or cause them to feel guilty and inadequate as a partner. So it really can be both sides of the coin here, where if one partner is more jealous than the other, they can feel like they are bad at non-monogamy, that they're supposed to be feeling good things all the time. And if one partner in the couple just isn't really someone who experiences jealousy too frequently, they might not feel like they're a very comfortable sounding board for their partner to talk about their jealousies. And so it can create a bit of a disparity there where the person who does feel jealousy and should talk about it feels embarrassed that they feel it's super way more often than their partner does. And so then they don't bring it up. Um, there's a lot of different ways this can kind of manifest, and people can set each other off. Mivalent says, probably incompatible if someone wanted this. I don't feel sexual jealousy. However, someone I was in love with told me they played Scrabble with someone else and they weren't going to play Scrabble with me. I would have a meltdown. Yeah. Absolutely. Bia says, sounds like a great kinky time if you own the feeling and talk about it. Yeah. If this person had just said, like, I want you to ask questions about what I did. I want you to be possessive. Because what I think they really want potentially is the feeling of reuniting. Like there is this sexy bonding kind of dynamic that can happen where you go out, you have your experience with somebody else, you go back to a partner that you already have, you tell them all about it, they get excited for you, and then they say like, but you're mine, you know, and they fuck the daylights out of you. Like some people want that. Some people find that very like reaffirming the relationship, and that can be very bonding. Great. If that's what you want, you are going to have to say that though, because a lot of people are going to be going into non-monogamy thinking they're not supposed to be super jealous and that they shouldn't bring up jealousies, except in the most delicate and non-possessive of ways. But some people actually do want to feel desired and possessed. And so you have to be able to talk about all of these things. And sometimes what you want is not a rational thing. And you can still articulate that you want it and get down to the heart of what's really going on there, instead of just actually being controlling and jealous or whatever. Edge Peasant says, this kind of insecurity about feeling jealousy made me think I couldn't be poly because I was led to believe poly people cannot experience jealousy. Yeah. I think that's first of all something that monogamous people put out, right? That is their first reaction is, I could never be non-monogamous because I get too jealous. You've heard that. Like, raise your hand if you've heard that one before. I know, but probably a lot of us have heard it like a million times. And so that's like the monogamous myth about polyamory. Unfortunately, a lot of like polyamory influencer therapist types, I think they do lean into that respectability politics angle where they are like, oh, jealousy isn't that big a deal. Like maybe it happens, but it's not that intense. And so it feels like there isn't sometimes room if you are somebody who's just like really, really fucking insecure. And Edge Peasant says, it turned out a lot of the jealousy I felt was more specifically about fear of being abandoned, not being communicated with, etc. Yes, exactly. That's actually what it is half the time. Half the time when somebody says they're jealous, it's actually some of these feelings that we're getting into today, which are quite different. And it's not about overcoming it personally. It's about communicating through it in your non-monogamy. Closet Demon says, I always get worried about this. I'm just not jealous. And then I feel bad that I'm not showing how much I want them or whatever. Ended a couple relationships over this, unfortunately. I'm sorry to hear that. And that really goes to show that this is a really legit insecurity, that like we get taught in monogamous world that jealousy preserves relationships, that jealousy means that you care. It's a really deep-seated part of that patriarchal conditioning. And so when somebody doesn't feel jealous, they can feel inadequate as a partner and be seen as inadequate as a partner. And that can be a really serious problem in people's non-monogamous relationships, which really, really sucks. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm glad that this is like something people are resonating with. And it's one that just like does not get talked about enough, I don't think. ACR, I know that's not actually an R, I'm just a dumb American, said I heard literally that today. I can't be non-monogamous, I get too jealous. Yeah, I heard that from a friend who was at that time fucking two different people. They were like, I can't be polyamorous, I get too jealous. Like, my sister, you're doing it. Insecurity because a partner is monogamous or more monogamous leaning. Sometimes non-monogamous and monogamous people get together, or one person within a monogamous relationship decides they want to pursue relationships with others while their partner does not. When this happens, the non-monogamous partner may fear that they are hurting their monogamous partner, that they're too sexually needy, too easily bored, that they're selfish, or any number of other common anti-non-monogamy stereotypes. Um, I, we've talked a lot about how people on the jealous kind of side of the spectrum can feel like they are needy, that they are demanding, that they are not independent enough, childish, whatever, controlling, too nosy. Um, those insecurities being really big insecurities that we can feel. But I want to talk also about like how people who tend to be feel like they just are naturally inclined more towards non-monogamy, people who identify as polyamorous, um, maybe even people who don't get jealous. Like we have to talk about really the heap of shit that gets dumped on them too. That they are seen as just craving lots of sex, not having any self control. They don't really value people. They get bored too easily. They're not considerate. They can't commit. If they really loved somebody, they could do this monogamy thing. They would do whatever a partner wants them to do. They're unreliable. All of this stuff. Like, those are really damaging stereotypes that I've seen just absolutely ravage the self-esteem of a lot of non-monogamous people, and they've just struggled through monogamous relationships over and over again, being potentially even like abused, but certainly insulted and cut down by partners and seen as a bad partner because of what they need. And a lot of that stuff can get kicked up too in a lot of these dynamics, or if there is a disjoint between how one partner comports their non-monogamy and how another person does. And that can keep the non-monogamous person from pursuing what they need and feeling like what they need somehow matters less. But needing, let's say, multiple relationships or needing lots of sex or needing novelty, that is just as legitimate as needing a really intense emotional connection. Like, sometimes two people's needs are incompatible, and that's fine, but both of those needs are completely legitimate, like whatever they are. My monogamous partner feels super insecure about me sleeping with other people, but knows it's important to me, so he avoids the issue, writes one Anon. Then I feel guilty about engaging in the sex and kink I want because I feel like I'm hurting him. Neither of us wants this to be a breaking point, but I'm scared that it will be, and it's halted any further progression in our relationship. Insecurity is a haunted hall of funhouse mirrors. Yeah, this is similar to what you were just saying, Edge Peasant. I've known people who really felt stifled by monogamous partners who turned out to not really be okay with them being polyamorous. It's really painful on both ends. And didn't communicate about it because they didn't want to upset their monogamous partner. Yes, I feel like in just the same way that being selfish and jealous can feel very stigmatized in non-monogamy, being quote unquote selfish enough to like want sex or to like need to go on dates, to like need to have new experiences, to be free, to try those things. That stuff is really stigmatized in the monogamous world, but even within polyamory, like people internalize that stuff and it's seen as a bonus, right? Like it's an optional thing. Um, Even in polyamory, we would talk about polyamory so much being about like love and community, and that's great, but like needing sex or like needing new experiences or needing kink is also just as legitimate as like having so much love to give or whatever thing that like supposedly sounds more respectable because of things like amatonormativity. So prioritizing a romantic bond as the most important thing. Like, it is still really hard to voice your desires if you are someone who the truth is just like, yeah, I want to have sex with a lot of different people. I crave novelty. I'm very sensation seeking. I'm very novelty seeking. Like, I like the excitement of meeting new people. I like feeling not controlled and hemmed down. Like, I want to do these things. I'm slutty. Like, that just is what it is. That's still seen as frivolous, not necessary, not loving, not caring. And it sucks because it makes it really hard for someone who is in that situation to just honestly say, like, yeah, that's what I want and that's what I'm going to do. And I'm not a bad person because I want to do that. It still gets demonized, even in non monogamy, to like want to be a slut or to need to be a slut. Um, or to just not, or to just like crave a lot of novel experiences. It sucks. Closet Demon says, as a mostly loveless poly person, that stuff's been thrown at me so much. Yeah. I'm And I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm also not surprised. It's so endemic. And I've seen people in my life who they are that type of non-monogamous person. Maybe they're aromantic, or maybe they're just like very slutty, like they just are very active, whatever, and they feel disgusted with themselves or feel like they're a bad partner because their partner gets hurt feelings about it over and over again. Like I've seen people really be like suicidal over this stuff before. Like they're treated as if what they need and want makes them a bad person or makes them broken. And it's so fucked up for us to be doing that as queer people, because that's exactly what straight people would say about our sex lives. Why do you need this thing? Why do you need this dirty, wrong thing? Hence, again, amoral vampires. We're all just vampires. We are all, if we are here doing this queer thing, we are already stepping outside of what society thinks is right, and what we need is something society thinks is wrong. So how the fuck are we going to judge anybody else who, like, what that configuration looks like for them is a little bit different? Like, it's just not helpful. Like, we have to stop moralizing that stuff. Even when a monogamous person is not bothered by their partner's non-monogamy, it is quite common for the non-monogamous person to feel uncomfortable going after what they want. They may not trust their partner to be honest about their hurt feelings, or they may simply think it looks and sounds bad for them to go out and get a ton of sex while their loved one does not. These feelings can get in the way of honest communication between both partners about their desires and limits, and could often lead the non-monogamous person to spiral in shame. It is hard to build a caring relationship when you believe you're fundamentally broken or unworthy of love, as many non-monogamous people have been made to. Feeling less worthy than a partner's other partners. Relationship insecurity doesn't always look like a gaping maw of demand. Sometimes it looks like turning away from a partner and rarely initiating contact or asking anything of them because you're so certain their other partners matter more. I sometimes like to say that I am only competitive when I think I am going to win. I have a self-protectiveness that I desperately need to overcome that has taught me to check out of tough situations before I am rejected, and I tend to assume everybody already sees the worst in me. I talk a little bit about this in the most recent piece on empathy. Why is this link not opening? Oh, weird. It's a broken link. But that's my most recent piece on how some autistics get by without empathy. So if we can't read other people's minds, we kind of assume people are thinking what we're thinking. And so if we hate ourselves, we think everybody hates us and knows everything about us that sucks. And it's very cool. And so when I start dating a person who already has serious partners, I get mortified by the prospect of getting in the way. It's not really jealousy that I usually feel. My anxious spirals sound more like I'm not as fun, I'm not as cute, I'm boring, I'm bringing nothing to the table, I'm getting in the way, I'll just see myself out. This kind of insecurity, when listened to, can prevent a person from contacting their partners proactively, expressing care and affection, or articulating what they want. It can also create a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if you behave in a distant, emotionally withdrawn way for fear of being too much, your partners will typically assume that you're not very interested in them. Emotional avoidance breeds emotional avoidance. That's kind of the takeaway point of the day. Unvoiced doubt, more doubt. Since monogamous culture teaches us that close relationships are a competition to possess someone, again, to view a partner as property, it's easy for conflicted, non-monogamous people with low self-worth to feel that we don't even deserve to play. Of course, it's not actually a competition. It's not actually a game you can win. This is monogamous framing. This is seeing a partner as property and seeing yourself as a prize to be won. None of that is real. We are in mutual relationships to each other as living creatures, things, not objects. But people have this shit and walk around with this shit sometimes. Sasha says, I feel this insecurity big time, feeling like I'm never going to be the primary partner. Ideally, I want non-hierarchical relationships, or that I'm the less important friend by default. Yeah. There's a little bit of like, I can't, I don't know if I can defend this position. I don't feel secure enough to ever assume that I'm in this position. And so I'm going to just step back or whatever, or be afraid of doing the wrong thing and losing and being disposed of or whatever. Even if, as you said, you don't actually want a primary partner, you don't want hierarchy. You still think in terms of like, okay, I might not want hierarchy, but I bet this other person has a hierarchy and that I'm dog shit on that hierarchy. Like, that's insecurity. And when you think that your loved ones don't love you, it is very hard for them to love you, whether it's a friend or a relationship partner or family. Like, if you think you are unworthy and unwanted, you're not going to reach out. You're not going to see your time as like a gift. And I think a lot of times that is a much better way to move, is to assume that the people that like you will be happy to hear from you, and that it's a gift you're giving them, that attention and time, and that you don't need to be stingy with it because they want it. Like, I had a friend who I just started sending voice threads to recently, and I thought, oh my God, she's going to think this is so annoying. I just talked for 5 minutes about this stupid shit. And like, she was immediately like, this is so fun. Like, I'm so glad you did this. Like, I've done this with a couple of friends lately where I've sent them voice threads, and like, I thought it would be mega annoying. And every single one of them was like, oh, I love getting to just like hear you talk about something going on in your day for 5 minutes at random moments throughout the week. Like, this is so fun. We should do this more. It's like, yeah, people who like you want to hear from you. Like, your attention is a gift. It's very hard to get that in the brain if you don't like spending time with yourself, you know what I mean? Or not even having to play the competition, Nick Nevin says, because you're so fucking exhausted from being subordinated in a nuclear family. Right. You don't have to play the game. You can show up for what you want to show up for. And only the things that are actually rewarding to you, for the most part. Insecurity about how you compare to other partners. And this is where we're really going to talk a little bit about intersectionality being a big factor in our relationship structures. It is fairly common for a non-monogamous person to draw unflattering comparisons between themselves and a partner's other partners. Part of this is because monogamous and heterosexual dating norms train us to believe that each person has a singular ideal partner, and that anyone who doesn't measure up to that ideal must not really be a real partner. Of course, these presumed ideal qualities that a partner must have tend to reflect society's existing biases. Anti-blackness, fat phobia, transmisogyny, ableism, the list goes on and on. C is a black, fat, non-binary woman who says she feels uneasy because her girlfriend's two other partners are lighter skinned and thin. The whole world sees me as lesser, and if I have a problem with my partner or my metamors, I have to look out that they're not treating me the same way. In the past, she's had to leave relationships where she was treated as less of a priority compared to non-black partners. This is unfortunately a common dynamic within many polyamorous spaces, which tend to skew very white. Kevin Patterson has a whole book about this called Love's Not Colorblind: Race and Representation in Polyamorous and Other Alternative Communities. When I dove into this book, reading it, I was really excited at the outset because he takes a very systems analysis of things. It's, racism as a system, not just an individual like bad person quality or whatever. It's not too liberal in that way. Unfortunately, I was a little underwhelmed by the book. I wish it had gone further into like racial dynamics within polyamorous relationships and different ways that can play out, and conflicts, and ways people navigate that stuff. Instead, a lot of it was more about how to be anti-racist at polyamory like groups, like how to make sure you're being mindful of racism in like at your munch, or like if you're organizing a munch or a dungeon event or a polyamorous meetup. And so a lot of that information was stuff that for me was just already familiar territory of just like incorporating anti-racism into group spaces, and like being very aware of how, if your space is predominantly white, it is white supremacist, and all of that. And like all of that stuff is very true of polyamory and kink, which are very fucking white and white supremacist spaces. I just really would have like it just wasn't what I went in expecting to read, because I think that is kind of a topic that applies to a lot of different groups and spaces. and that can be kind of translated to them. And like something that I and partners of mine and people in my life, people of color who are polyamorous, like talk a lot more about like the interpersonal dynamics of like, oh, I'm dating you as a white person, and so now I'm having to meet all these fucking white people, and I'm um, outnumbered in the room a lot of the time. Like dynamics like that. That's something that I wanted to read about, you know? Or I've written about this previously, having policies about whether white people are allowed in the polycule. Like I know multiple people of color whose policy is like, I am not dating someone who's dating white people because I do not want whiteness centered in my life, and that's just my boundary. And when I first heard that, I thought that sounded a little bit wild because it's like, oh, it's not even about who you're dating, it's about who your partners are dating. But I had to really like just think about it and process it through my own like whiteness, right? And like insecurity and just reactions to that, and like kind of go, yeah, no, I can understand why someone would decide that's what they need to do, because a lot of times the second you insert a white person into the structure, there's this gravitational pull of white supremacy that fucks things up. It changes what neighborhoods you're in, it changes who you're around, and it makes people unsafe. And like, so people are allowed to have what boundaries they need to have for themselves. So there's a lot of like really, there's a lot going on in intersecting identities in polyamory and non-monogamy. And I hope Kevin kind of writes a follow-up book going into some of this stuff, because I think this book is a good intro level to, you need to be really mindful of how like white supremacist your polyamorous groups and spaces are. And that's a lot of people need to start from just there, and that's important. But like, I just would really love to hear about the interpersonal aspects, because that's something that I see play out in my relationships and relationships with people I care about all the time. Um, Sasha says, and it's not always explicit. So much of this dynamic in interpersonal relationships can be really subtle and unintentional, but no less damaging. And it keeps happening over and over and over. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the fucking thing about this stuff. Like, um, and this applies to like trans misogyny too, and like ableism. Like if you are a racialized person, people undervalue you, and they have these lenses like that they apply to you that they're not conscious that they're doing. And so, and if you name it, it makes them uncomfortable and defensive as like white people. And so there's so many different levels that you have to be operating on, where you are trying to be fair and give the person the benefit of the doubt, because you're dating this person who's dating this person, and you don't want to, be seen as angry or irrational. And you know that even if you bring up the unfairness you're seeing, that people might turn on you anyway. And so you're having to like think about how everything's going to be perceived. If you're being really fair, like, you know, double checking your own reactions. And yet you still just see this pattern of, why is it always me that's undervalued relative to other people? Like, and that's just something I've seen in relationships for people of color in my life, especially Black people, especially Black women. Even things like being assigned the role of the mediator. I've seen a lot of like, if there's a conflict between people, uh, a Black woman is often the one that's expected to like maintain the like moral standards of the community, and like keep people communicating, and like do all of this emotional labor, and explain things to people, and like just be like uh having to like emotionally mother everyone through the relationship. There's so much fucked up stuff going on. Bia says, how to be anti-racist in close relationships that don't necessarily need to be as fair or just as rights focused, or that consider multiple needs more equally. Well, yeah, where it comes down to like more things than just like, because if you're looking at like a munch or a polyamorous meetup or a dating group or whatever, the answer is almost always like, there are not enough people of color who have decision making power or resources in this space. If it's led by and organized by a majority of white people, like that needs to fundamentally change. Like you need to uproot this shit and start the fuck over from that premise. Like the whole thing's kind of fucked, but like that's kind of what you need to do. And the same thing's true for like queer spaces that exclude lots of groups, like typically trans women, or that are just really cis gay dominant. Like you need to uproot that shit completely and like rebuild from something that is shaped and led by everyone, but especially by people who have been historically excluded. Like that's, I mean, yeah, like we have to always talk about that, because like most groups are still not doing that. But like also within interpersonal relationships, you have to be able to talk about everything and like intersecting identities and triggers and like ways that you might be doing racist shit and not realizing it, and be able to like just hear that and not have a fucking meltdown and not be manipulative. Um, but in practice, what ends up happening is often the more marginalized people are just kind of, everyone's tiptoeing around their anger. They're afraid to get called out by the person who's like the most racialized or the most disabled in the community. And then they like oust the person the second that person does speak up. Airgender says, yeah, I hope more books on anti-racism, unpacking white supremacy, and polyamory come out. Because if the focus is mainly get more BIPOC in your polycule with no guide to unpacking racism, rut-row. Oh, God. I'm reminded of a Dear Prudence article where someone was like, can I use my dating life as an anti-racist exercise? Like, is that a good way for me to learn anti-racism, is if I just date a bunch of black people? It's like, no, you need to go hide in a well. If you're asking that question, you need to go away for a long time and read a lot of books. I mean, actually, the answer isn't them to actually be isolated. I know that, but like, don't inflict that shit on people you're dating. God, it's so fucked up. Air gender, yeah, right on the money. It's hard too though, because I don't know if you can learn how to fully unlearn white supremacy without being in relationship to people who aren't white. Right. Yes. What you need sometimes what you need is to be smacked the fuck down. You know, like you need to be in a community where you are not in the majority, and you need people to like tell you when you're being stupid, and like and not in this like ritualistic I'm a white person using a black person as my like moral confessor way. Like it needs to be more casual than that. Like when I've been in like organizing spaces where I'm in the minority, and it's like as a white person and it's like majority black people, like it's a lot of like someone just being like, okay, like people just being like, okay, you're being a little ridiculous. We're eye rolling at you. Like you don't need to say all that. You don't need to do all that. It's just shit that gets you over your fucking self. Like I don't know. I'm just endlessly grateful that I like grew up in a community that was racially diverse enough that like you had people just like you had just cross cultural exchange and interaction, and you heard when you were sounding stupid, and it wasn't this huge performative thing, you know. And sometimes literally like just getting your ass kicked is like kind of metaphorically or literally at a young age kind of gets you where you need to be. Like just being in conflict with one another is like what's actually important. And a lot of white people are so isolated from and isolate themselves from the whole rest of the world that they can't ever handle any conflict. They can't ever being told that they were like a dumbass. Like they're so afraid of being racist, and like they equate every mistake on the same tier, when a lot of times it's like you just said something that was kind of ignorant. Like now you know better. You don't need to have some big performance that's all about you about it. You know, it's like it's everything is equated with, oh, now everybody can see I'm like a horrible evil racist, when it's like, yeah, no, you just don't know what you're talking about. Like you need to like get out into these experiences more, not isolate and like try to be perfect, you know. um Pathological shame and guilt keeps people from having accountability. Right. And acting super fragile keeps white people from having accountability. So if any criticism ever is this horrible accusation of racism and I'm being canceled and I'm so fragile, blah, 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 then you don't ever have to actually face any accountability. So, yep. It sucks to be treated like a ticking time bomb because you're angry. Yep. Yep, yep, yep. It is such an unwinnable battle. So this is the stuff I'd love to see more writing about in polyamory, because it really plays out the second there's a conflict between multiple people. What are the identities and positionalities of the people there? And it's a mess. It's tough, and you have to do it, and it's good to do it. But you have to be able to talk about it. So if anybody sees any good writing on this stuff, always send it my way, because it's not talked about enough, I don't think. Talking about another identity comparison. Tim is a white trans guy whose greatest relationship insecurity comes from how much he has in common with his metamors. His partner Mark is married to a trans man, and all of Mark's other partners are trans masculine too. If I think too much about it, I feel angry, fetishized, and reduced to having a pussy, Tim says. Non-monogamous people can also feel insecure over perceived differences in things like sexual experience, relationship experience, class privilege, skill level, ability level, on all different types of domains, identity, shared history, or any other number of factors. When we feel that our differences mark us as lesser than our metamors or more disposable, we may choose to pull away, avoid voicing concerns within the relationship, become understandably bitter, or develop conflicts with our partners or metamors. And if we recognize an ongoing pattern of being mistreated by multiple partners along such lines, we may quite understandably find it hard to trust anyone moving forward. And this can be so many things, like, do you go out in public with all of your partners? Or are you less likely to go out in public with like the plus sized one? Are you keeping in mind what spaces and activities and events are accessible to your partner who's a wheelchair user? Or are you only seeing them in a very constrained number of places? Like, the list goes on and on. And people can feel really insecure about either differences or similarities within their polycule, or that they're among them and their metamors. Edge Peasant says, yeah, I've had multiple relationships blow up because I reminded them of the racial dynamic. Yeah, people want to pretend that it's just not happening. And you have to be able to talk about it freely too. Like, you have to be able to say what you're feeling and thinking. And like, as if you're the white person in that dynamic, you have to fucking trust your partner enough that you're going to tell them how you feel and what you think, and they can tell you if they think you're wrong or you've done something hurtful, and it's not the end of the world. Like, you can't act like you're terrified of your partner ever being angry with you, especially if you're a white person. Like, you need to give them the space to have whatever reaction they have. Otherwise, you're going to really feed into that fragility bullshit. So. Oh my god, I'm at my friend's house and just realized I've been watching the whole stream on data. Oh no! Oh no! RIP your cell phone bill, no! Next insecurity, scorekeeping. In our desperation to prove to the monogamous world that our relationships are mutually beneficial and fair, we non-monogamous people can get too fixated on there being a perfect balance of sexual and romantic activities between partners. If one partner goes on a date, they might feel uneasy until their partner has a date to match them. And if one partner gets far more sexual attention than the other, it can cause a massive dust-up of hurt feelings. I have this fear, which I recognize as silly and kind of incel-ish, but alas, of comparing myself to my girlfriend over who gets more bitches, essentially, writes Tumblr user Lapsco. Making the possibility of multiple relationships a test where I need to prove that I'm actually attractive and didn't just get lucky that one time. Really overt acts of scorekeeping seem to pop up the most in couples that were originally monogamous and later opened their relationship up. This makes sense. They're coming into non-monogamy with all the baggage of a monogamous relationship structure. But wherever it manifests, it can lead to controlling or inauthentic behaviors. Partners dating or fucking at someone, not because it feels good, but to maintain their score. But there is no perfect fairness in any relationship, be it closed or open. How we feel, how we spend our time, who we are, and how others relate to us, what we talk about and understand, it can never be completely balanced. Hell, it is not even objectively measurable. To deny this is to erase the unique magic of every connection we form, and every moment we ever get to share with somebody we care for. Fear your partners are disappointed with you. I've sometimes joked that I'm polysaturated means everybody's already mad at me. And indeed, balancing the requests and calendars of multiple partners against your own desires can be quite the challenging feat. Beyond the logistical challenges, there's often the insecurity that as a non-monogamous person, you are failing to measure up as a fair-minded enough partner. That you're showing a preference, letting your new relationship energy leak out, don't have enough time to give everyone what they need, or are being selfish. This insecurity often looks a lot like scorekeeping in the sense of balancing out time with everybody and keeping track of what you do with whom, but it's less about an obsession with keeping everything perfectly balanced and more about a creeping fear of getting in trouble with one's partners and an approach to dating that is about avoiding conflict rather than proactively creating the dynamics and shared moments that you want. So it's very emotionally avoidant, right? It's like I'm afraid people are going to be mad at me. I'm afraid I'm letting people down, and that's making it really hard for me to communicate honestly about what I'm available for and for me to even acknowledge like what I actually want to be doing with my time. I'm just under a state of threat that everybody's going to abandon me because I'm not showing up enough kind of all the time. Thanks for being here, Closet Demon. Have a good shower. Thanks for everything you had to add to the chat today. Non-monogamous people afflicted by this insecurity may give out tons of reassurances to partners who haven't asked for it, or be really apologetic, and run themselves ragged from date to date to date until they burn out. They may find it difficult to tell their partners no, even when two partners need their support at the same exact time, and may struggle to articulate what they need for themselves. Their relationships may present a source of stress in their life or be unable to evolve because they are so afraid of throwing off the equilibrium. Rather than going with the flow, this type of insecure non-monogamous person may try to force themselves and their relationships into order. So it's almost kind of, it reminds me of codependency a little bit, trying to control other people's reactions. Like I'm trying to make sure everything is fair, nobody feels left out, everybody's needs are being met. When part of the like great thing about non-monogamy is like you don't have to meet a person's every need. Like you can fail, you can be not enough sometimes. You can have things be imbalanced from time to time based on the situation. And it can just continue to recalibrate. In theory. Nick Nevin says, damn, what a privilege to even have the time to play that kind of mindfuck game with your partner. Poly and class intersect more than people want to name. Who gets to have this much leisure time? Well, I don't think it is. I'm not thinking of it as a mindfuck game. I'm thinking of it as people who they do have very limited time and they are incredibly stressed about meeting the needs of everyone. Because most people, they are working a job, dealing with a disability, have so much on their plate that they can't show up for everyone on the level they might want to. And that's why the calendars are such a fucking mess to navigate. But I mean, I do think it's true that people who are more likely to be really like demanding and inconsiderate about what that means for their other partner's times are going to be people who have more class privilege and control over their schedule. But I think part of why this stuff happens is because people have such limited time under capitalism. Insecurity about your relation type being undervalued. Non-monogamy can teach us that every relationship is a unique meeting of interpersonal energy, incapable of being simply categorized and ranked, if we can absorb that message. But there's a lot of external pressure to see our connections through a monogamous, a meta-normative lens. So that is seeing a romantic relationship as the most primary thing. That's a meta-normativity. Ranking long-term partnership as more important than something newer, and discounting the connections that are non-sexual, non-romantic, or between friends. My most valued and stable connection is with my best friend, writes one aromantic relationship anarchist. Even though there hasn't ever been any indication that I'm less important to her than her girlfriend, I still feel insecure over the idea that a best friend should be less important than a monogamous girlfriend. I feel like I'm being unreasonable by not accepting my place as secondary in like a hierarchy, even though I don't want that and she doesn't want that either. This insecure belief that friendship matters less than romance can prevent people from connecting as closely with their actual dearest ones. They may be afraid to lean on their friends in times of illness or crisis because they think a partner is supposed to be their primary support. If there is any tension between themselves and a dear friend's partner, they may assume that the partner pulls rank. Unless deliberately addressed, non-romantic partners may be left out of important legal processes, such as the drafting of wills or the sharing of health insurance. So this stuff is really baked into how society is structured. Even if you want to have someone who's not a romantic partner be really core to your life, most of the time you can't share health benefits with them. You can't have them be the person who can always visit you at the hospital. There's all of these legal barriers unless you give them power of attorney in advance, that these legal systems will keep them shut out of being as interwoven into your life, even if that's what you want. Very few intimacies or social privileges are afforded to friends in a highly socially isolated, patriarchal culture where the couple reigns supreme. And so, non monogamous people who do not prioritize romantic bonds can feel deeply undervalued and alone, no matter how deeply their buddies, queer platonic partners, or whatever else is care for them. And talking about some of the negative stereotypes that kind of quote unquote slutty polyamorous people internalize about themselves, I think aromantic people get shit on so badly. They're seen as like inhuman, uncaring, just using people, like not fully emotionally developed, hurtful, like sociopathic. All these awful things get dumped on aromantic people, and they're made to feel so fucking broken and like undeserving of care. And it makes me so upset to see. It is such a like mirror image of what asexual people get and so many other communities, like, and what autistic people get, like no empathy autistics get. Like a lot of us, even if we don't have the same experience, because I'm definitely not aromantic, I resonate with and feel so much like empathy, I guess, but like perspective taking for all of the judgments that get dumped on people for whom romance is not important to them. It's not a drive they feel. It's not a feeling they ever feel for a partner, even if they are in partnerships, and how that gets dumped on them as them being somehow incomplete. And it really sucks. Nick Nevin says, I'm talking about the person who's keeping score with how many partners they have in comparison. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Who has the time to do the scorekeeping thing? Yeah. It's very, I see what you mean. That's very monogamous people, like middle class white monogamous people who just became non monogamous. Those are like the ones that do the scorekeeping thing the most that I've seen. Not exclusively them, but yeah. It is it's that possessiveness, and seeing a partner as a property. Insecurity that a partner means more to you than you mean to them. Recently, my friend Lola was crestfallen to learn that her longtime friend and new boyfriend, Andre, was not interested in ever having a primary partner. With all of their history and the intensity of their connection, she had hoped that Andre would one day want to share a life and nest together. I feel pathetic about it and like I'm still alone, Lola told me. I really need a long-term partner I can lean on. It's not unusual for two non-monogamous people to have different wants for their relationships or to have somewhat different feelings for one another, with painful results. If a person is searching for a long-term partner but falls in love with a happily solo poly slut, they may feel that their love is wrong or that they cannot be together. Or if one member of a couple has far more partners than another, the less attached partner may worry that there is something wrong with the fact that they think about and pine for their partner more often. Feelings like this can cause non-monogamous people to create artificial distance or mistrust the attachment they have with a partner who seems less available or simply less obsessed. And in many cases, this is completely needless. Different people attach and feel differently. Even within a monogamous relationship, how often two people think about one another won't always match. So long as nobody is being taken advantage of, it isn't an issue. Love is a joy to give. Longing and attraction are pleasurable to experience, and there is nothing pathetic about luxuriating in it. Some of us are relationship OCDing, hardcore BPDers with favorite person fixations that last for a lifetime. This doesn't mean we have some toxic tendency that needs to be changed, or that our partners are cold-hearted and failing us. It's just a difference, and it's one that non-monogamy is uniquely positioned to accommodate. Us hardcore, emotionally needy lover girls can have multiple people to dote on. This is a book from Allison Raskin about relationship OCD. It's called Overthinking About You, Navigating Romantic Relationships When You Have Anxiety, OCD, or Depression. And it's just a very quick, thin, kind of frothy, activity-filled kind of self-help book talking about her OCD and her relationship OCD and being in multiple relationships where, thinking about the person and thinking about the relationship was a really major part of her life, including a case where she had a fiance who just disappeared one day. He just left her without any notice or communication. So if you're somebody who already obsesses about your partner and then that happens, obviously you can imagine how emotionally destructive that kind of experience could be. Hey, Stacy, how's it going? Welcome. Good to see you. See you soon. See you on Sunday. IRL. Yeah, so this book is all about relationship OCD. So being obsessive in your relationships and how that doesn't actually have to be a problem to the relationship. Some people just are overthinkers, and that means sometimes we overthink about people and relationships and favorite persons and all that stuff. And that can be perfectly fine and fun. It doesn't mean that you're bad at relationships or bad at non-monogamy. Fear that a partner wants to escalate the relationship. So polyamorous people frequently critique the relationship escalator, the unspoken, culturally assumed progression of heterosexual romantic relationships. The relationship escalator pushes people forward. So it says you go from talking to then you're hooking up, and then at some point hooking up, you have some kind of define the relationship, and your boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever, if it's a straight relationship, and then you're cohabiting, and then you're married. And these things are just what happens next. And people are moved up them so coercively and subtly that many non-monogamous people also fear getting swept up by it. And that can cause them to mistrust gestures of care and affection from their partners because they might think that those gestures are going to move them up an escalator, or it is some expectation that a partner is putting on them. And that's because certain gestures or certain shared experiences are associated with a step up the escalator in straight world. And so unless you talk about it, those things can come with a lot of baggage associated with them, even in non-monogamous world. Oh, Stacy says, can't wait, need to call you about that at some point. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can talk this afternoon. Loki has a vet appointment at 2:30, but then my time, but then I'm free afterward if you want to talk. Just let me know. Aaron is a solo poly person who has been pushed up the relationship escalator by partners before. My ex would do things like invite themselves along for hangouts with my friends and get angry that I wasn't interested in a holiday trip to their parents. I was almost forced into a dynamic I didn't want. Now they find it hard to trust it when a partner tells them I love you or offers them gifts. Even though these gestures do not have to mean any kind of commitment or escalation, it can be hard to tell if a partner is entering into their non-monogamous relationship with a tired old cis-het monogamous script. Non-monogamous people who crave independence may feel ashamed of themselves for not desiring a more committed or more escalated relationship. They may also feel too guilty or afraid of abandonment to reject their partner's escalating requests. This is another thing that just makes it really hard for people to communicate honestly about what they want or don't want. If saying, I don't ever want to live together is taken to mean I'm not serious about you, then you might be in a position where you say yes to a bunch of things like cohabitation that you don't actually want to do just because you don't want to be alone and or mistreated or seen as uncaring. Like Aaron, they may grow suspicious of gestures of care that they genuinely enjoy because of what those gestures could symbolize to somebody who is escalating but not talking about it. All of these factors can make honestly negotiating boundaries within a non-monogamous relationship into a minefield. Notate says, in the process of decoupling exclusivity and emotional vulnerability from only romance and romantic partners, how do you then define romance, love, and the difference between partners and friends? Well, you decide that. Like, there is no answer, and you do not have to if you do not want to. I've been talking about this on Tumblr a little bit. I personally do. You know, like I am someone who has romantic feelings about people, and that feels different to me than friendship does. In a lot of ways, friendships are just way more like stable and secure. I really don't get much friendship decay over time. Like if I don't hear from someone for a few weeks, that's fine. I worry that they'll get mad at me if they don't hear from me for a few weeks, but like I don't need constant maintenance in every friendship. I don't get jealous if I find out that two friends of mine are going and doing things together, I'm like relieved. I'm like great. Great. They're meeting each other's needs, and I didn't like this is beautiful. There's a whole relationship going on here that I don't even need to worry about or have any role in. This is like such a relief. Like I have like friendship compersion. I love when my friends become friends with each other and I don't even have to be there. It's amazing. It's like, oh great, there's friendship happening and I didn't even have to do any of it. Like I can just like go hide under the bed or whatever. And preserve my spoons. I can dip in and out of the conversation as needed. But for me, I do also have like romantic feelings. Like I have like physical contact with a person I feel romantic about. It hits different. It feels really good. It feels very emotionally satisfying. I crave time with the person if I'm crushing on them. Like I feel strongly about them. I sex is better with them. Like I don't really like sex between friends. Like that doesn't appeal to me. Intimacy between friends, like a little cuddling is fine, but like if it's going to be emotionally charged, I can't really. I just don't feel that really. Usually, it takes me a really long time to even realize that I like love a friend sometimes because it's a more subtle, less explosive highs and lows kind of crazy feeling. Whereas for me, you know, if I feel romantically about someone, there's some fucking highs and lows that come with it. Like there's wanting to know what they're doing, wanting to hear back from them, wanting to spend time with them, being really happy when I get time with them and really sad when I don't. Like that's just how it goes. And I personally don't feel that way about friends. With friends, it's like, cool, great, fine. You know, it's not that emotional roller coaster ride as much. Um, that's my wiring. That's not a lot of people's wiring. If you're aromantic, you certainly won't relate to that. And it has nothing to do about like the depth of what you talk about. Like I talk about with friends about the deepest shit, and it's really meaningful to me. And that does deepen the relationship, and it makes the relationship better, the friendship better, to talk about like everything, you know, like really profound wounds, traumatic experiences, family shit, problems that we're dealing with and we don't know how to solve, like feelings that we're having, like intimacy. I think most of us need more intimacy. And I think expanding the band of like who we share that intimacy with is something that probably most people would benefit from, because we're taught to see that as exclusive to a monogamous or to a romantic relationship. Um, and so I think probably for most people who are navigating non-monogamy, it does mean bringing more vulnerability into your friendships and leaning on your friendships more for emotional support, which is certainly something that I've also done in my like non-monogamous journey, you know, like seeing friends as chosen family more and like chosen inner circle that are just as important as romantic partners. And part of that is because I get so insane about romantic partners. And so it's nice to have people that like love you, that like it's not as crazy highs and lows. Um so that's me, you know. Like I've kind of had to learn to meet a lot more of my needs through my friendships, because I tried to offload them all into romance, and it was kind of unhinged, um, and just like really just difficult for me to be emotionally regulated. Whereas it's a little bit more possible with friends. Um, but these are made up divisions, and so you can decide where to put them. You know, like And if you don't feel a difference, then maybe you don't feel a difference. I have plenty of friends who they feel romantically and sexually for their friends. And sometimes with those people, I've had to say, like, cool, it's fine that you feel that way about me, but like we're not gonna fuck. Like, just like, we might be friends and we might have similar kinks, but we're not gonna fuck, like, because we're friends. And to me, that's really, I don't like, I like there to be places where there are boundaries there. And that doesn't mean I care for you any less. In fact, it's the opposite. It's like, I don't want to go into crazy insanity town with you, so we're not going to do that thing. Like, I feel stable in my relationship to you, so I'm not going to turn it into something that is charged and crazy. Um, that's me. Lots of other people are completely different. And some of these people are my friends, where they have casual sex with their friends and kind of casually tell their friends I love you all the time. And those are friends that they have sex with. Like, oh God, no, I could not just casually do that and still just be friends with someone. Like, I'd be stalking you. I'd be in the hood of your car. Like, if we're saying I love you as friends and we're fucking, but we're just friends, like, I'm gonna go crazy. I'm gonna be weird to you. So, and then I'm just gonna suddenly start being jealous of shit. Like, I don't want to do that to people. Um, but those are my boundaries. Other people can do it differently. And like in my like social networks, it's a whole mishmash of people who are fucking, not fucking, very emotionally intimate with each other, share certain activities, but they're not in a relationship. Like, all the labels break down, which is freeing. Mavalent said, I kind of did the opposite of that with my only relationship. After dating 2 months, we spent Christmas and New Year's with each of our families, completely unrelated to escalating the relationship. The family trip wasn't an escalation. And that's great to like not presume that those things are. And I think a lot of like queer non-monogamous people will do this awesome thing where it's like they bring their best homie to family Christmas, or you know, they have to go home for a funeral and they bring a few trusted friends with them because those friends are their support network. And it doesn't have to be a partner. And if you've had these really close friends or roommates for like years, why shouldn't they be the person to show up at the family funeral versus some clown you started dating 2 months ago? Like, why does the person that you have sex with have to be your source of that kind of emotional intimacy? The joy of non monogamy is not assuming these things are all interlinked and getting to blow it up a little bit. Airgender says, see, DMC, I do get friendship jealous. Yeah, like a lot of like friendship insecurities are just like, they're just not as emotionally charged for me. Like, I still I have fears of being abandoned and insecurity in friendships too, don't get me wrong. But like a lot of that, like, just like the most like intense insecure stuff is just more exclusive to like relationships where I have a romantic attachment. It's just a different wiring. Um, but I can see for a lot of people who don't really experience romantic feelings as a separate thing that strongly, like the lines between friendship and relationship blur so much, and it might not even be always serving you to distinguish between those things. The distinction kind of depends on who you are and your dynamic with the individuals you care about. Yeah. Um, Sasha says, I can have very intense love for my friends and have experienced romantic friendships where the lines are kind of blurred, but it's very different from when I'm really in love with someone. Yeah. Yeah. I relate. Valen said, my one sexual relationship was really more of a close friendship where we also had sex than a romantic relationship. Even though neither of us were aromantic, we just didn't feel romantic attraction to each other. Yeah. 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 That's, and like a person's capacity to even enjoy that or like maintain that varies. Because some people, you're in that situation and you'll catch feelings, or you just wouldn't want to be in that situation if there wasn't the possibility of feelings. Like, some people are really driven by that romancy shit, but some people aren't. Stacy says, I would get friendship jealous with certain people, but now I realize it's because I liked them more than a friend, now that I am finally out of the closet. Let's hear it from my lesbian sister, everybody. Applause in the chat for my sister who's a lesbian now. Yay. One of the best developments of this past year is my sister being a lesbian. the best news that I am taking as a personal win, even though it's not my life. I'm probably still the most hype about it of anyone. Yeah, that like intense, close romantic friendships. That is such a lesbianic thing. That is such closeted lesbian stuff. Let's go, lesbians. Oh, hey, Blair. Yay, lesbian win. Yay. Yes, the whole family gay now. Yay. We love it. We love it. Um, yeah, Stacey, I've heard so many pog play of the game, lesbian of the game. Um, say that kind of thing where it's like, oh, I had this friend and I was always super jealous if she ever got a boyfriend or like if she spent time with other people and it was like this close intense thing and like the feelings were so intense and it's like, yeah, because you were gay for him. Airgender says, to be honest, I think the friend jealousy is more pronounced when the friendship has dysfunction and I'm not getting my needs met. I have more secure friendships and the jealousy is more like, oh man, I wanted to come, which is way more tolerable. Yes, which this goes to one of our last bullet points, which we'll get to soon. And I better get to it soon because I got to take Loki to the vet. Sometimes you're just insecure because the relationship is insecure. And it's not you being weirdly insecure. You're just correctly identifying that the relationship is insecure. Which that is where I felt the most personally friendship insecurity is when I've been in dynamics of where someone was abusing someone or there was like a lot of pressure for everybody to all be on the same page and it was kind of a high control group kind of dynamic, that kind of thing. Yay, lesbian. All right, I gotta go through this relatively quickly. Anxiety that your partners don't get along. Some non monogamous people crave kitchen table polyamory, a relationship structure where all a person's partners and metamors, and of course, a metamor is a partner's partners, get along well, enough that they could easily share a pizza or play a board game. Sorry, everybody, this is polyphobic, but I did click on Chris Fleming's, or I did link to Chris Fleming's polyamorous song because they do talk about board game couples. If all partners aren't on board with this idea, or if a conflict rises up between some metamors, it can cause serious insecurity explosions. What makes me insecure and frustrated is the delicate dynamic of where do I step in when my primary and other partner are having communication issues, says one anonymous Tumblr user. Sometimes I get nervous or hesitant to do my own thing or go out on my own in case I come home and I can tell my primary partner and other partner have had a bad night together. If they aren't careful, a hinge partner, so for those who don't know, a hinge partner means you're kind of the bottom of the V, and then you have two partners who they are not dating each other, they're dating you. So you are the hinge of the door frame. A hinge partner can find themselves slipping into the role of mediator when their partners do not get along, at the expense of advocating for themselves. And when a non monogamous person feels very anxious about conflict between their partners, they may respond by triangulating information. That means spreading information behind their partner's backs, communicating indirectly, emotionally censoring partners, emotionally surveilling partners, basically demanding that everybody seem okay all the time. Like, are you okay? Did you guys talk? Are you guys getting along? Will you guys hang out? That kind of thing. Or by pressuring metamors into having more contact than they'd like. A dear friend of mine got stuck in a polydynamic like this. Their partner would create artificial scenarios that would force all of their partners into contact, such as volunteering my friend to help a metamor through a crisis, even when that metaphor hadn't even asked for the friend's help. Though the sunny, fuzzy image of loved ones all gathered around a communal table may sound dreamy, and it's certainly what some polyamorous people want, some people just don't get along with one another and do not want to. This is only a problem if we believe that our non-monogamy must be frictionless and that nobody is ever allowed the dignity of being a selfish bitch. Sometimes bitch be eating crackers in bed. Bitch eating crackers is a advice column kind of trope for like if somebody has gotten to the point where every little thing they do gets on your nerves, then they're a bitch eating crackers. Sometimes another person is just a bitch eating crackers and you just don't fuck with them like that. And it does not need to be the end of the world to not get along with all of your partners. As frustrating as that can be for people who do want a more kind of communitarian kind of setup. So we got a lot of activity in the chat on this one. Let's see what's going on here. HC says, I needed to rethink a lot of my friendships because when I formed them, I was so dysphoric I couldn't handle attraction. So now I understand a lot of my intense friendships were more romantic crushes. Yeah, the more comfortable I get in myself and my body, the more comfortable I do get with having some blurring of the lines. Because now I'm not as worried about, oh, are people attracted to me in the wrong way and see me as something I'm not, which is a problem in some of my friendships before. Yeah. So I understand why I was so fucking frustrated with them. Sasha says, I think it's also important to be able to discuss relationship insecurity without demonizing the other person. Like sometimes shit just happens that creates a rift and you got to work around it. Absolutely. Everybody loves the Chris Fleming link. Thank you. I know Maddie doesn't like this song, which is fair, but because it does feed into a lot of people's stereotypes of like straight polyamorous people. Maylin says it's not polyphobic. I interpret the song as playfully self-deprecating. I think so too. I like it, but I kind of shit on. It's hitting me where I live in my judgments anyway. So of course I like it. Chris Fleming is talking about is like 90% of couples looking for a bisexual unicorn. And that is one thing I really like about it. And like what I love about Chris Fleming, who I'm seeing on Saturday, yay, he's going to be here. Is like he really does sound like he is like a queer woman talking about being preyed on by a straight couple in that song. Like he is not taking the perspective of like what people would assume Chris Fleming to be if they didn't know his whole complex gender thing as this like very like lesbian adjacent prancing pony show pig person that they are. Like they really get like so many like very specific experiences that I've heard so many queer women that I know talk about, and like that's just Chris Fleming's experience. Like Chris Fleming is faggot subaltern for sure, no question. And Chris Fleming is one of the girlies, and like so I agree that like the song does have this like sinister. It has that air of like when there's a sinister vibe coming from the mostly straight polyamorous couple. Um, that like there was a brief period of time where I said I was a bisexual woman, and I did experience a lot of that kind of thing, and it was horrible. Being poly is cringe, and that's good. Yes, and to reiterate something I've said on Tumblr, straight polyamorous people are queer, and they're annoying. Being poly is cringe, and that's good. Oh, the triangulating and trying to make partners get along thing, Sasha calls that anxious border collie behavior. Control-seeking behaviors because conflict is too scary. Period. Yes. All my codependents out there, we need to all remember that we are actually being controlling motherfuckers. We are not being the martyr of the world. Very easy to believe that. Okay, everybody is so hype about this song. I hope we have enough time to listen to it before I leave. So, because I don't think I'll get copyright dinged for it. We'll see. But yeah, there's always an inside queer look from all of Chris Fleming's jokes that I love. Maddie says, I don't have a problem with Chris or the song. I've just seen it referenced too many times by people who are actually shitty on Twitter. That's fair. I have not seen a lot of poly discourse on Twitter, but I can't imagine it's good at all. That is not a place where I would want to have conversations about non-monogamy. But that's fair. You know, that is a fair association too. Because there are people that are laughing at the Chris Fleming video from inside the community and these experiences, and then there are people who are laughing at it from the outside. And so it does evoke like those things, you know. Bia says, when people, me, think any conflict is their own personal moral failing, one more reason why moral frameworks aren't super useful. Yes. Amorality 2025. I still need to work on that piece about you don't have to be a good person. But yeah, moral framing is not the most helpful. Herding breeds match my control frame. Got to manage that. I need to give myself enrichment. Yeah, you have to find, like, maybe there is some world where us, like, anxious codependents could become really good doms. Like if I could just, I get very Armand. I'm thinking very Armand Interview with the Vampire here. When he finally stops pretending to be a submissive, like his younger submissive sex slave self, and like starts just beating up that old man, like, like just playing with people like dolls, and just owning the power in that instead of trying to manage everyone's feelings all the time and thinking you're doing them a favor. I would love to see somebody go on like a codependent to controlling sadist arc. That sounds hot. That's one idea for enrichment. Maybe we should each try that. I don't know. Maddie says it was shocking how bad it sucked even like years ago before it's so thoroughly Nazified. I have not been on Twitter in well over a year, so I don't even know what the fuck's going on over there. Yeah, I feel like kink and polyamory is like my Kong stuffed with peanut butter. Yes. Blair says I'm on it. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm actually thinking that maybe some people that I know that are that might be their strat, is that they went from being like codependent people pleaser to giving dom. What a great cope. Yeah. Having multiple people in my support system, absolutely, very helpful to me too. Oh my god, we're gonna run out of time. Fuck. Okay. Just regular old attachment insecurity. Not all problems within a non-monogamous relationship are caused by non-monogamy. In fact, most of them aren't. We non-monogamous folks are so used to processing our way around jealousy, negotiating novel and ever-changing relationship dynamics, and justifying our decision to be non-monogamous to a scandalized monogamous public that it simply may not occur to us sometimes that our relationship dynamic might simply be challenging because our partner is unreliable, inconsiderate, or cruel, not because of anything we failed to do as thoughtful non-monogamous people. If someone treats you shittily, you will feel bad, regardless of the relationship structure. This is part of my article on Jessica Fern's book, Polysecure, kind of a critical review of the book. Modern day attachment research teaches us that every single relationship has its own attachment style. So you're not anxiously attached as for life. You just might have a relationship that you're anxiously attached in. And that might be because it's an insecure relationship, which reflects how well the parties involved show up for each other. Insecure forms of attachment, then, are not a personality type, nor are they set in childhood. They are a pattern of feelings and behaviors that come in our relationship to a specific person. And so we might look anxious in a relationship where our partner is constantly threatening to reject us, or turn avoidant if a partner is constantly expecting us to perform happiness for them and not giving us any privacy. There's that emotional surveillance piece again. If a partner routinely rejects us, undermines our feelings, refuses to discuss conflicts, never shares about their own emotions, disappears on us, or lashes out, then our insecure feelings might just be an accurate barometer that the relationship sucks. And no polyamory workbook can fix that. Here's a picture of 3 birds on a tree branch. One of them looks very scrungly. Nearly all of the insecurities that I've outlined here can first be addressed with communication. Worried that your partner likes another person more than you? Ask for reassurance. Afraid that you might be texting too much? Find out. Partner is pressuring you to get more serious? Tell them what you are not comfortable with. Worried that your partner treats you differently because you are newer, less romantically inclined, or less privileged than your metamors? Bring the unfairnesses that you've noticed up. Of course, communication will only actually work if all parties genuinely want to understand each other and are willing to admit fault and make concessions. If your partner has 0 track record of ever hearing you out or apologizing for their actions, if the power in the relationship is stacked against you and they have no interest in rectifying that, if they really do not care about you, then even the most thoughtfully written message in the world will still fail to move them. You cannot control another person's actions or feelings. They must choose to care. And this brings us back to the limitations of jealousy and envy as a framework for understanding relationship problems. Not everything that goes wrong in a polyamorous or non-monogamous structure comes down to a partner having irrational feelings that they need to process or soothe. Quite often, we feel insecure in our relationships because those relationships actually are insecure. If we haven't been given enough information to know where we stand, if we have less social power than our partners, if we have no idea what our partners genuinely want, if we are not given direct answers to questions, if we are mistreated or used or taken for granted, then our attachment system will recognize that we are on shaky ground and we will instinctively act in ways designed to protect us. In these cases, the problem at hand isn't really envy, jealousy, or even the insecurity itself of any kind. These feelings are just signals that our needs are not being met. And if that is the case, the only solution is to take action to address that unmet need, which may involve working to change the nature of a relationship or communicating better in it, but just as often may mean investing more deeply in bonds to other people or leaving a bad relationship altogether. Thankfully, non-monogamy makes it possible for our relationships to continually evolve. And when practiced intentionally, it can help us accept that loss, change, and revision are both beautiful and inevitable. So that is the piece, just in the nick of time. Edge Peasant says, my personal anxious border collie behavior was like constantly asking if I was being annoying, always trying to help and be useful, because no one will value me unless I work my ass off for it. Yes, very common. And I think also if you have had that parentified kid thing, it's like, is there a need I'm not meeting? Is there a need I'm not meeting? I don't feel satisfied until there's a need that I'm meeting. Male Valen says, yes, this is certainly sometimes the case, but I don't think all attachment insecurity is caused by a person currently treating you badly. No, that's certainly not true. That it is always an accurate barometer of what's happening right now. But I do think it does tend to communicate what you need. And that may sometimes mean like I was treated badly in the past, so now XYZ thing is a thing I'm really insecure about and I need extra care around it, you know. That's still, I think, in my mind, like an unmet need. Like, even if your need for reassurance comes from some quote unquote, like, irrational relational trauma from years back, you still need the more reassurance now. And it's okay to ask for that, right? So that would be an example of an unmet need that's not like the relationship is fucked or the person is conspiring to make you insecure, but you still have needs that you're like advocating to have filled. Nick Nevin says, thanks for the encouragement. Painfully doing shadow work to transform people pleaser part that falls to their professor's feet in submission to reclaiming power with the help of my friend who's teaching me how to dom. Oh, love that. Oh, we always we love seeing more doms here. Dom, I'm trying to domspirate. I'm trying to force dom as many people as possible for my own selfish reasons to rebalance the economy. No, that's beautiful. There was this amazing talk that I saw at Beguiled, the HypnoCon this summer. I don't have time to get into all of it, but it was talking about finding your dom sona. I think specifically for women and gender minorities and just people who people who also just feel insecure doming, and a lot of it was like that really stuck with me. Nath was the woman who put it on. Really, really cool. She just talked all about like harnessing all of the sides of herself that are creepy, that she normally has to mask. So things like just, you know, it will pull from some of the stuff we've been talking about today. Stuff like maybe wanting to know tons of information about what your partners are doing, or watching every little thing that they do, or trying to control how people feel or react to things. All of these toxic aspects that like a lot of times we're afraid of in ourselves, like using that shadow self in your like dom sona. And I found that so so fucking hot and compelling, and like I felt like, okay, I can relate to some of this here. I can work with this. I don't know how yet, um, but there's something here. Bringing the creepiness into the kink is very, very appealing. Harness your scary. I think I am unfortunately just also like a scary sub. Like I'm just like a Sundir. Like I what I actually want to be is just like a crazy stalker sub. But there's some way to make that work. I'll figure it out. Maddie says force dom. Intriguing. Yes. Yes. There's lots of fun hypno potential there. And hypnotists are constantly or hypno switches are constantly hypnotizing each other to make them hypnotize each other type shit. So there's definitely something going on there. I'm literally taking notes on this LMFAO. I wish I had more time to go into it. Maybe we should have a like. I'm the wrong person to lead this, but like I have it, finding your dom sona or like kinky shadow work stream. Dom sona kinky shadow work. I'm not going to remember what this means later, but or not all of it, but I'll write nath. That'll remind me. It's an amazing talk. What I want is I wish that all of anybody who wanted to become a better dom could have sat in on that talk that Nath gave at Beguiled, because it was so inspiring, and it was just like unmasking. It was like an unmasking talk, so I fucking ate it up. It was amazing. Turned our really traumatized people pleaser alter into a very fucked up sadist partly through your work recently. Great development. What? Okay, I want to hear more about that. Please share more on the Piscord. That sounds amazing. Yeah, hypnotists hypnotizing each other is very duck season, rabbit season. It's very like, no, you're the dom. No, you're the dom. I'm doming you to dom me. Oh my god, it's so stupid. We're all so stupid. It's very fun. Hypnotists hypnotizing each other to make the other person hypnotize them feels like the kink version of a money laundering scheme. It's infinite money hack. It's infinite doms hack. If you hypnotize your sub to be your dom. Switches, y'all drive me crazy with this shit. If we could ever get having that person on Time Theft Today would be great. Yeah. Their talk was fucking dope. Yeah. I don't know them that well. I just like went up to them after their talk and was like, that was really hot. But hopefully I could get them to do it. Zip zap zopping theater, folks. No. Yeah, zip zap top. Zip zap top. That one's free. Okay, I gotta get out of here. I'll play polyamorous for you while I'm getting ready, getting the pet ready to go. But thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out. This was a lot of fun. Oh, good to see you, Authentistic. Sorry to hear you're going through a breakup, but hopefully some of this stuff is helpful for thinking about what comes next. So while I collect Loki, I'll leave y'all with this.
Just because I have bad hair doesn't mean that I'm polyamorous.
And then I'll end the stream. Oh no, Chrissy.
Just because I have bad hair doesn't mean that I'm polyamorous.
Yeah, we've been meaning to tell you for a while. We're poly now.
There is something very about polyamorous couples. It's never who you wanna be. Polyamorous, who's polyamorous? You're never like, oh, sweet. It's usually the guy at the Verizon store who wears vest to parties. The kind of guy who'll nag you at like a continental breakfast buffet, but not even confidently nag you. Like mid-nag, he'll try and desperately shove his hand into his pocket and miss. His hand like a Romanian woman trying to seek sanctuary in the 18th century.
French jerk, you know a guy got into Radiohead. Too young if even his pocket rejects him. I'm Polly, and when they tell you it's with such sleep, like a dog dropping a rodent carcass at your feet, like this only benefits you and is menacing to me and everyone else.
It's never who you want to be. Polyamorous is polyamorous. You're never like, oh, sweet. You're usually like, could I get a helicopter to take me to safety?
Oh God,
It's so nice to see you, but we do have something real quick that we just need to tell you about. Oh, sure, tell me. We're polyamorous.
You know that humans aren't naturally monogamous.
Oh, I should've known how you kept going on about how welcoming the burlesque community's been.
Now that is a red flag. Like burlesque straight people, come on.
Come back, little pastry. Fight each other.
Oh, I sensed something conspiratorial before, but I decided you were going to try and get me to play a board game or something. Side note, board game couples give off an even more menacing vibe than poly couples.
Oh, I love this little jump he does. Oh God, so good. Such a good fucking song. We love her. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being here. Here's Loki in the basket. I imprisoned her very quickly. I gotta take her to the vet now. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. Got into Radiohead too young. All right, I gotta go. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And yeah, this VOD should just like naturally be on YouTube. So talk to y'all soon, and see many of y'all in the Discord. Bye.